Chapter 2167. 3 years later. A big dog galloped in the sea, and a man was riding on its back. This man was holding a spear, wearing a golden ring and a red ribbon around his neck. Behind him, a large group of tens of thousands of maple leaf conches with ominous aura were chasing him all the way. On the other side, there was also a large number of flying starfish, rushing at him head-on. When the two large groups of ominous creatures collided with each other, one could only see the tip of a spear swimming in the shoals of fish and snails in the collision torrent. Every time there was a light crack sound, an ominous creature had fallen. Although it was the safest way to purify ominous creatures with a cleansing stone, it didn't mean that ominous creatures couldn't be killed in other ways. It was just that even after they died, there would be ominous aura remaining, so no one was willing to take the risk of fighting with ominous creatures. However, Han Fei's Neza was an incarnation that had been fighting until he reached the sea expansion realm. From the moment this incarnation appeared, he had been fighting until Han Fei found the Nine Palace Heaven. Even if Neza stayed in the Nine Palace Heaven, he had been fighting in the trial. Han Fei let this incarnation take its course and evolved into the image of the battle maniac he was today. Han Fei's body was like a fish or a dragon in the tide of ominous creatures, and not a trace of ominous aura could stain him. Pa, pa, pot in the tide of fish and conches, popping sounds could be heard. In just half an hour, without the purification of the cleansing stone, there was only one creature left alive. Han Fei reached out and sucked away the energy crystals floating in the sea, watching a large amount of ominous aura being swallowed by the last maple leaf conch, whose strength soared to the sea expansion realm. And Han Fei, who had been prepared, suddenly raised the fire-tipped spear, leaving a fire mark in the sea, and the big conch exploded in an instant. Waving the fire-tipped spear in a circle, Han Fei carried the spearhead on his shoulder, patted the heavenly hound under him, and said, "Simp, I heard that the city of wanderers and the city of scavengers have designated a group of primitive cemeteries as the frontline battlefield. Let's go and have a look." The heavenly hound said, "Master, it's a battlefield. There must be a lot of strong masters. There will definitely be heaven-opening realm experts. If we take the initiative to send them over, what if they don't look at us? Don't forget, we are now wanderers, independent cultivators, travelers from the heavenly crater. As long as we can fight, why wouldn't we want Wanderer City?" The Wanderer City and the Scavenger City bordered each other, and they were separated by a primitive graveyard. Origin City also had a large number of experts stationed here. The three parties agreed to turn the primitive graveyard into a training ground. The battles that happened along the way would result in life and death. In short, the three great factions of the Primal Chaos Wasteland had always been competitors or enemies. At this moment, on the battlefield, a small team of 7 wanderers was being attacked by the 10,000 Scale tribe. On the other hand, the 10,000 Scale tribe had as many as 14 Pioneer Sea Realm cultivators. At that moment, a human clan wanderer shouted from the wanderer's side, "No, we've fallen into a trap. That primitive graveyard is a trap. No matter what, I have to think of a way to rush out and pass the news to the rear." One of them turned into a green snake and shouted, "Who's going to cover for me? These people obviously planned this. Sun Yukai, you're the fastest. Only you can run out of here. Hurry up and go." The one called Sun Yukai was a human expert, but his face was also very pale. "How can I live alone?" Someone shouted. At this time, "Do you want to be wiped out?" Swoosh, 3 beams of white light flashed by. They were 3 speed-type experts from the 10,000 Scale tribe, and they were charging at Sun Yukai. "Want to run? 3 of you have already died. You couldn't run away just now. How can I let you run away now?" Bang, bang, bang. One of the 3 stopped Sun Yukai, and the other took out a black bead and crushed it. Instantly, the surrounding void was locked. The giant snake among the people from the Wanderer City struck the air with its tail, and a jade bead shining with white light was spat out from its mouth. Someone shouted, "Brother June, that's your natal core bead." The green snake shouted, "You're about to die, what's the use of the natal core bead?" Rumble, a powerful piercing force swept across the surrounding 10,000 miles. However, the locked void was only slightly damaged, and it instantly froze again. A member of the 10,000 scale tribe laughed. "This is the void poison of the creation realm. How can a king like you break it?" As they spoke, the green snake was slashed in half. The others could not save him in time as their speed was slowed down. Instantly, they were attacked by a group of experts from the 10,000 scale tribe, and all of them were severely injured. Sun Yukai activated his blood ignition realm, and he was about to die under the attacks of 3 kings. All of a sudden, a blazing golden barrier descended from the sky. The 3 experts of the 10,000 scales tribe were caught off guard, and were trapped by the golden barrier. The 9 black dragons raised their heads and breathed out terrifying flames with murderous intent. They severely injured the 3 experts. At the same time, there seemed to be a strange power in the flames that could burn souls. The bodies of the 3 kings from the 10,000 scale tribe cracked under the high temperature. Clank, just as the crowd was shocked that someone was helping them, they saw a figure holding a blazing spear, with a red ribbon around his neck, stepping on the giant barrier that turned from gold to red. The sound waves vibrated in the barrier, and the bodies of the 3 experts from the 10,000 scale tribe exploded. "How dare you? Who dares to ruin our plan?" Seeing that his attack on Sun Yukai had failed and was saved by a human, one of the experts from the 10,000 scale tribe immediately took out a soul-devouring awl. With a cold smile, Han Fei slammed his spear into the gate of heaven, and the soul-devouring awl exploded on the spot. As for the person who attacked, he suddenly felt his body tighten. He was actually wrapped up by a golden ring. "My name is Naja, a traveler who walks in the dark. Dying in my hands is the glory you earned in your previous life." The 9 dragons' heavenly fire barrier was retracted under Han Fei's feet. After a series of loud noises, the weather changed, and the 3 experts who were trapped died at the same time. The person who was trapped by Han Fei tried to break free from the universe ring, but he found that part of his strength was locked by the ring. When he was about to call for help, Han Fei said calmly, "Open the gate of heaven with my sword." Pucci, the lords only saw a flash of light, and the man exploded. Han Fei stepped out, pointed at the void, and the man died again. From Han Fei's appearance to the death of the 4 lords, only less than 2 seconds had passed. The experts from the 10,000 scale tribe were all shocked. Where the fuck did this expert come from? He was only at the Pioneer Sea realm, but how could he be so powerful? One of them yelled, "Retreat." There were 14 of them, but in the blink of an eye, there were only 10 of them. On the side of the Wanderer City, the sudden appearance of a powerful expert like Han Fei instantly turned the tide of the battle. However, when they were about to retreat, the red silk around Han Fei's neck floated up. In the next moment, the red silk within 10,000 kilometers rose up and trapped this place. Han Fei said calmly, "Death will be your only ending. When the red silk falls, you will no longer feel pain." Sun Yukai and the others only saw Han Fei stepping in the void as if he were taking a stroll. In his elegant steps, the spear ignored the void, the barriers, and the distance. When the spear was just extended, the tip of the spear had already smashed a person into pieces. "Gudu." Sun Yukai and the others were all shocked. So strong. The remaining experts of the 10,000 scale tribe all roared and their blood surged out. The scales on their bodies shone as if they were using secret techniques. However, Han Fei chuckled, and his body began to change. 2 more heads popped up on his back and shoulders, and 2 more pairs of arms grew out of his body. Holding the spear in both hands, the universe ring in one hand, the sword in the other, and the armillary silk in the other, Han Fei charged into the battle alone. Green Snake roared, "Thank you for your help, fellow cultivator. Brothers kit." Han Fei reversed the situation alone. When the others came back to their senses, Han Fei had already killed 6 lords. They felt as if they were fighting side by side with a heaven-opening state expert. After a moment, above this place, some experts glanced over. Mainly because the noise here was too big. Even on the front line, it didn't make sense that so many kings would die all of a sudden. Therefore, the experts of the Wanderer City and the Scavenger City all fixed their eyes on this place. Soon, they only saw an indifferent young man with 3 heads and 6 arms burst out and overshadowed the 7 kings of the Wanderer City. At this moment, Han Fei had killed 2 kings alone. The heaven-opening state experts of the Wanderer City were shocked. Whose warrior is this? I didn't know him at all? Chapter 2168. Sun Yukai and the others had never thought that a pioneer sea-state cultivator could be so strong. They had seen many powerful kings, and they had even seen many pioneer sea-state cultivators who had opened up an origin sea of 100,000 kilometers. However, it was unheard of for a powerhouse like Han Fei to kill the enemy as if it were an art. Han Fei killed 8 of the 14 kings of the 10,000 Scales clan, which made Sun Yukai and the others speechless. This guy's origin sea must have expanded to 100,000 kilometers. In fact, they were right. Han Fei obtained a huge amount of resources. When he couldn't use his contractual spiritual beasts and naturally endowed spiritual beasts, he could only give them to Neza's clone. Thanks to Neza's clone's super strong combat foundation and excellent foundation, he was able to carry so many resources to improve himself. Now, he released Neza's clone to digest the rapid improvement brought by the 100,000 kilometers of Origin Sea. Zhang Daqian's clone could also expand the Origin Sea quickly, but he didn't have a suitable environment for it. It was better to let it practice under his nose. The battle came to an end. The City of Wanderers completed an extreme counterattack. Under the sealing effect of the red armillary sash, none of the 14 kings of the 10,000 Scales clan could escape. Han Fei withdrew his 3 heads and 6 arms, carried the fire-tipped spear with one hand, tied the red armillary sash around his neck, and put the universe loop on his wrist. The 9 dragons' divine fire shield and the Yin-Yang sword were refined by Han Fei himself, but they didn't have Neza's characteristics and were prepared as additional weapons. However, this set of gorgeous sea-quelling bizarre treasures shocked the kings. How much did he have to pay to get so many treasures? He was the only one who had 6 hands in a battle and didn't miss any of them. Of course, in addition to weapons, Han Fei's own strength was also extremely strong. Whether it was speed, physique, swordsmanship, spear techniques, strength, or soul attack methods, he was an all-rounder. At this moment, Sun Yukai and the others all bowed to Han Fei and thanked him. "I'm Sun Yukai. Thank you, fellow cultivator. Fellow Taoist generosity in saving us is equivalent to a crisis. We owe you our lives." Green Snake, who almost died, also saluted Han Fei with a pale face. "Brother, thank you for saving my life. Words cannot express my gratitude for this great kindness. If there is a need in the future, Juanxing's life is yours, brother." However, Han Fei put on a proud look and just nodded slightly with his head held high. "It's nothing. Don't be so surprised." Sun Yukai smiled and said, "It's nothing to Brother Neza, but to us, you saved our lives. Of course, we should thank you. Brother Neza, which division are you from? Why would it appear on the battlefield?" "Battlefield?" Han Fei sized them up and said, "I'm from the heavenly pit world of the divine land of the East Ocean. I heard that there's a place called Wanderer City in the chaotic wasteland, which is the home of wanderers. Just now, I only made a move because I overheard your conversation." Sun Yuren, Jun Xing, and the others exchanged surprised glances. Jun Xing swallowed and said via voice transmission, "Old Sun, the heavenly pit world. Legend has it that it's the largest war zone of the divine land of the East Ocean. It's said that it fights undead creatures and extraterrestrial demons every day." Sun Yukai responded, "You can see it from this guy's attack just now. I've never seen such a good fighter. How far is it from the heavenly pit world to the chaotic wasteland? He actually made it all the way here alone." Sun Yukai quickly said with a smile, "It turns out that Brother Neza is from the legendary heavenly pit world? What a rare guest. We are from the Wanderer City. However, the Wanderer City is not here. The place where we are now is the war zone of the 3 major forces in the chaotic wasteland. There are a total of 3 major forces in the chaotic wasteland, namely our Wanderer City." Han Fei listened to Sun Yotsai's description and said indifferently, "Battlefield? Do I have to participate in the battle here first after joining your Wanderer City? Sun Yukai said, Of course not. My Wanderer City welcomes all rogue cultivators in the world. As long as it doesn't violate the principles of my Wanderer City, namely, don't destroy the homes of the Wanderers and don't betray the creed of the Wanderers. Han Fei asked, What creed? When it came to the creed, Sun Yukai said, All races have the right to live. My home is not allowed to be tarnished by anyone, including myself. Han Fei clearly sensed that Sun Yukai was a little excited. He said, That was said by the Master of Silence himself, and we all respect it. Jun Xing said, In my Wanderer City, as long as you abide by the creed and don't betray or abandon it, this place will be prosperous and the most perfect place in the divine land of the East Ocean. The current war is inevitable. We must defend the Wanderer Kingdom in the war. Han Fei was intrigued. Sure enough, the strong were always strong. Gu Tingnan's courage and means couldn't be underestimated. It wasn't easy for him to lead so many people out of the chaotic ocean and to build such a city in the chaotic wasteland today. Judging from their tone, Gu Tingnan was almost worshipped as a god. Han Fei knew why this city was really powerful. This was the true faith. Everyone worked hard for the same goal. Han Fei's lips curled up. I like it. Where should I go to join? At this moment, a figure walked out of the void. It was Sun Yukai and the others. He hurriedly bowed and said, Greetings, Lord Buping. I have something important to report to you. The number 9527 primitive graveyard we found is fake. It's a scheme of the 10,000 Scales clan. We were ambushed and chased by the 10,000 Scale tribe. Xiao Feng, Yi Lang, and Qin Yu died because of carelessness. The few of us were saved by Brother Najah. Oh, Brother Najah came from the sinkhole world of the Eastern Sea Divine region. The newcomer said, I heard it all. Neza, a traveler who walks in the dark. His combat power is amazing, and his body is full of treasures. If I'm not mistaken, you should have reached the peak of the Pioneer Sea state. With such strength, all you want is the opportunity to open the sky. Then he introduced himself. I'm Jiang Buping from the City of Wanderers. I'm one of the generals of the graveyard battlefield in the chaotic wasteland. I'm responsible for the exploration of some primitive graveyards and the trials in the graveyard battlefield. I've seen your performance when you fought against 10 enemies alone. If you want to join the City of Wanderers, we welcome you. Of course, if you have any objections to the purpose of the City of Wanderers, you can also choose to leave. I'll give you enough resources to compensate for the people you saved. Han Fei carried the spear on his shoulder and raised his head slightly. This faith is good. I'll join. But aren't you afraid that I'll be in trouble? Sun Yukai said, Brother Neza, maybe you don't know enough about the City of Wanderers. From the time the Wanderer City was established until now, none of the people who harmed our Wanderer homeland are still alive. Even if my lord, the Lord of Silence, attacks the enemy's main city, he will kill that person. Suddenly, the eyes of Sun Yukai and the others lit up. They knew that a person who could come from such a distant place like the Heavenly Pit to find the City of Wanderers must have a strong determination in his heart. However, Han Fei immediately said, But I will only join for the time being. After I open the sky, I'll still leave. Jiang Buping frowned slightly. But believe me, the rise of the City of Wanderers is only a matter of time. As more and more people know us, we will naturally become stronger and stronger in the future. Han Fei shook his head. Wandering is my destiny. What you pursue is home. What I pursue is to prove the way and the further road after the way proving. A short stay will not change my original intention. Jiang Buping was a little embarrassed for a while. He felt that with Han Fei's current strength, he could open the sky at any time. He didn't know that it would take at least hundreds of years for Han Fei to digest the power of the Origin Sea, so the only thing he hesitated about was that if Han Fei stole some information from the City of Wanderers and then left, where could he find him? Jiang Buping said, With your strength, I can report it to the 4 generals of the City of Wanderers for confirmation. If they think there's no problem, you can stay in my City of Wanderers. Han Fei nodded slightly. Jiang Buping nodded. My city of wanderers has just fought with the other two major forces of the chaotic wasteland. Now, the situation on the graveyard battlefield is tense, so it may take a while. If you don't mind, you can join my team and adapt to the situation. It just so happens that Sun Yotsai's team has lost 3 Pioneer Sea Realm powerhouses. According to the tradition of our 10-person team, I will give you 2 more kings, which you can lead temporarily. Sun Yukai will be the deputy captain. What do you think? Jiang Buping cherished talents, and it was true that Han Fei's strength was too strong. In any major force, there were many Pioneer Sea Realm powerhouses. However, there were also strong and weak ones in the Pioneer Sea Realm. For example, Han Fei couldn't be regarded as a normal Pioneer Sea Realm powerhouse. The threat he caused in the Pioneer Sea Realm was almost comparable to that of a Pioneer Sea Realm powerhouse. Who wouldn't want such a strong master? Han Fei said, I'm not used to having a lot of people. These few people are enough. Jiang Buping hoped that Han Fei didn't want them. Pioneer Sea Realm powerhouses were also scarce. In wars, it was common for strong people to be transferred here and there. If Han Fei didn't want them, he could save 2 Pioneer Sea Realm powerhouses. Besides, because Han Fei had joined this team, no matter if it was the primitive city or the city of wanderers, no one would be able to defeat them. But Jiang Buping agreed readily. Chapter 2169. 1 year later. It had been a year since Han Fei joined Sun Yotsai's team. And in this short year, their team became famous on the graveyard battlefield. They were called the Slaughter Team by other teams on the Wanderers' side. Because many people knew that Neza was a lunatic. He pursued extreme killing and the pleasure of killing a king with one blow. During this year, he had experienced 13 battles, large and small, and no enemy could survive more than 3 moves from him. As a result, when the trial teams of the Scavenger City and the Primitive City heard the Slaughter Team, they couldn't help but be shocked. At this moment, the Slaughter Team was exploring a primitive graveyard. This was the first time Han Fei had really explored a primitive graveyard since he came to the chaotic wasteland. In his imagination, the primitive graveyard should have been swept by strong masters, and there should be no good things worth robbing. However, this was not the case. Some primitive graveyards might have been very strong in the past, so the war swept over there, causing the people there to be plunged into misery and suffering, and there was nothing good there. But there were also some primitive graveyards, although ravaged by war, which could recover. A world had been destroyed for a long time, but as long as the origin of the world did not collapse, there was a chance to recover. What Han Fei and the others were exploring now was such a recovered primitive graveyard. Han Fei said, Sun Yukai, intelligence. Sun Yukai said, the location is correct, near the primitive graveyard 303. There were signs of recovery here half a year ago. It should be the recovery of the origin of the world. The main task of our trip this time is to search for natural treasures born from the recovery of the world for 2 years. Han Fei nodded slightly. What are the chances of being ambushed? Sun Yukai said, the recovery time of this place is too short. It is unlikely that the Scavenger City and the Primitive City know about it. We discovered it when it began to recover. At present, it seems that the safety factor is 9 stars. But in order to prevent the recovery of the world and the birth of relatively powerful primitive creatures, we still have to be careful. Han Fei nodded. Let's go. In a primitive mist, Han Fei and the others quickly passed through until they came to an empty place. Han Fei shouted, release the chaotic energy. Sun Yukai and the others had already prepared just enough chaotic energy to open the channel. After more than 8,000 strands of chaotic energy were released, a small channel appeared. In fact, the chaotic energy to open the primitive graveyard did not need too much. But 8,000 strands was actually the limit. It was just enough for 8 people to pass, and Han Fei added another 1,000 strands. Under the surprised gazes of Sun Yukai and the others, Han Fei said, be careful. Yes, Captain. Half a month later. In fact, in the past half a month, Han Fei had been moving in the direction of the nautical panorama. This was not the chaotic sea, so there would be no confusion of direction. The nautical panorama only needed to point once. Han Fei didn't care whether the natural treasures were obtained by himself or not. He had already used chaotic spiritual treasures, so ordinary natural treasures were nothing to him. Half a month was not a short time. With the ordinary speed of a pioneer sea realm cultivator, even if he maintained a moderate speed, he could still travel about 1.5 billion kilometers in such a long time. In fact, on the 8th day, everyone discovered one thing. Jun Xing said, "Have you found that the depth of the sea here has begun to become shallower? But there is more and more sand here." Sun Yukai added, "And the quality of the sand seems to be getting better and better, and its strength is getting higher." Someone said in surprise, "Have we encountered any special treasures?" Sun Yukai said, "Don't be careless. It may be dangerous. There may be anything in the recovered primitive graveyard." Han Fei's perception swept the depths of the sea of sand and found that the sand there seemed to be flowing slowly. Han Fei immediately shouted, "Stop." Everyone immediately became vigilant. "Captain, what did you find?" Han Fei said, 3. Everyone? 2. 1. Halala, suddenly, just in the sea below them, a tentacle covered with yellow sand instantly rose into the air. And there was more than one tentacle appearing around them. All of a sudden, within a radius of tens of thousands of kilometers, tentacles covered with white gauze stretched out of the sea one after another. Clatter, swish, the tentacle instantly broke the void. Han Fei was shocked. Vines? This seemed to be an extremely huge creature. Unfortunately, he was not in his original body and didn't have the demon purification pot, so he couldn't see what this creature was. However, Sun Yukai suddenly shouted, "Captain, run! It's a trap!" Han Fei was puzzled, but at this moment the surrounding vines had already lashed over. Han Fei clenched his fist, and the universe ring flew out from his hand, and the golden gung chi burst out, slashing at those tentacles. It was not that Han Fei didn't want to take everyone away directly, but the dense giant tentacles in the distance were rising, and he needed to test the combat power of this monster. Han Fei asked, "What is this?" Sun Yukai said, "The devouring worm of the primitive city. Although this thing is called a worm, it is actually a kind of weird demonic plant. It can absorb the origin power of this world. When the origin power is almost obtained, it will bloom and bear fruit, and finally completely strip the origin of this world. We have seen the white sand all the way. It can be seen that this devouring worm has been devouring for a long time. Now its strength may have reached the limit of the sea-opening realm, or even the heaven-opening realm." Han Fei frowned. "Is there such a thing?" "Rip." At this time, Han Fei couldn't help frowning. The power of the universe ring broke out and cut off a tentacle. The severed tentacle burst into a mass of white sand, sweeping towards Han Fei and the others. Han Fei couldn't help but be shocked. Since this devouring worm had the ability to devour the origin of the world, then this white gauze probably also had the power to devour the origin of the world. Han Fei shouted, "Don't touch that white sand." The red armillary silk appeared, and with a sweep of the red silk, the white gauze was directly strangled into nothingness. However, the sky full of tentacles slapped down, and everyone could only fight side by side and attack these tentacles. For Han Fei, it was not difficult to defeat these tentacles, but for Sun Yukai and the others, it was a little difficult. Han Fei tried to scan the surroundings with his perception, only to find that these tentacles had covered 100,000 kilometers, and there was a sandstorm sweeping over from 100,000 kilometers away. Shoot! Han Fei was horrified. If he was swept by this sandstorm, how could he run away from this white sand that had the power to devour? While Han Fei was distracted, a team member lowered his battle height to defeat a tentacle and was suddenly enveloped by a void sand mist. Humph! Don't get away with it. Chapter 2170. Without his body, no matter how strong Han Fei was, he was only at the peak of the Pioneer Sea realm. Moreover, this peak would have to be discounted. Others thought that Han Fei had reached the limit of the Pioneer Sea realm, but in fact, only he himself knew that he was still far from the limit of the Pioneer Sea realm even though he had the body of Neza. Seeing that his teammates were in trouble, Han Fei waved his spear backhand, and a spear light pierced through the 4 tentacles, shattering the gauze mist. However, when the sand mist was pierced through, the man was already badly mutilated. Seeing the massive amount of white sand below him surging up, Han Fei's red armillary silk broke out of the void, turned into a blade, swept away more than a dozen sand grains around, and picked up the man in the end. "Thank you, Captain, for saving my life." Han Fei shouted, "Everyone, follow me." At this time, running out was definitely not an option. Han Fei took out the nautical panorama and said in his heart, "The weakness of the devouring worms." The universe rings turned into countless rings and attacked crazily. The chaotic energy in Han Fei's body was greatly consumed. These things could not be destroyed for no reason. In fact, they were very powerful. Sun Yukai, "Captain, don't worry about us. It is said that when devouring the world source, the devouring worm can borrow the power of the world source, so it is equivalent to us becoming enemies with this world." Han Fei snorted. "I've never seen such a weak world. It had already become a graveyard. Even if it regained some vitality, what could it do to me? All of you keep up?" Swoosh, 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 they followed Han Fei all the way. Along the way, the 8 of them attacked continuously. After running for about 1,000,000 kilometers, except for Han Fei, everyone else had basically used up their reserves of chaotic gas. Jun Xing said, "Captain, I'm exhausted. Don't worry about us. Find a way to run." Someone shouted, "Captain, do you want us to throw ourselves into the sea of sand before you're willing to leave?" At this moment, Han Fei sensed that a sandstorm had appeared in all directions. At this moment, the nautical panorama's one chance to point had been used up. There were still 2 more times left, and he had to make good use of them. Although he had the jade scroll of his main body to protect him, it was better not to use it unless it was absolutely necessary. He had come out to gain experience, not to ask his main body for help. Clang, a large golden shield descended, and the 9 dragons' heavenly fire shield directly protected Sun Yukai and the others. Han Fei said indifferently, "You're just a demonic plant. No matter how large you are, you're just a small tool. Bootlicka, come out?" Buzz, Han Fei pulled Simp Dog out and rode on him. "Doggy, this white sand has the ability to devour flesh and soul. If you don't want to die, show me your ability to devour heaven and earth." At that time, Simp Dog felt uncomfortable. "Master, there's so much sand. How can I eat it? Should I use the heavenly shield technique and leave?" "I can't leave. If there were no accidents, the surrounding hundreds of thousands of miles would be covered by this white veil. We've fallen into a trap. If you can't devour the power of heaven and earth and hold on until I find this creature's weakness, I, your master, will die with you." The flatterer cried out in alarm, "Master, don't scare me. Also, you said that this sand is a living creature? Such a big creature, what realm is it at?" Han Fei sneered. "You're just a plate of loose sand. How can there be a realm? It's just a borrowed weak power. Hurry up, don't dawdle. Otherwise, when you die, I'll call my projection to save you." Howl. Simp Dog was the kind of person who didn't rush others. He was timid and gluttonous. But this was the first time that he ate sand. This guy was forced to rush into the white sand by Han Fei. The red armillary silk rolled into a cone shape and hit the sandstorm with a bang, opening a way for himself, and Simp Dog had to open his mouth wide. This kind of devouring was similar to Lurenquang's. But Simp Dog's devouring power could cover a surrounding area. It was just that Simp Dog didn't seem to want to swallow too much of this sand, so the area covered was not large, only about 10 meters. "Master, this sand is a bit disgusting. It seriously slows down my speed. I can't run fast at all. My speed is more than 10 times slower. Can you get rid of this thing quickly?" "Shut up. You talk too much." In Han Fei's hand, the nautical panorama pointed to a certain direction. Han Fei said, "Doggy, sky escape." At that moment, only a ray of light could be seen passing through the sandstorm. This light burst out, and Simp Dog's speed burst out about 4 times. Han Fei sneered. No matter how fast this devouring insect was, it was impossible to set off a sandstorm spanning hundreds of millions of kilometers in a short time. Since it wanted to use its power to strangle him and the others, there must be a flaw in the sandstorm. Therefore, as soon as Simp Dog used the sky escape technique, the nautical panorama reacted in just 2 minutes. Bam! Han Fei jumped down from Simp Dog. The yin and yang swords merged into one, and the white gauze was annihilated as fast as it could be. In this sandstorm, a fruit appeared. This fruit was the only green in this sandstorm. Han Fei slashed with his sword, and the roots connected to the fruit were broken, and the white sand seemed to have lost control, collapsing in an instant and falling from the sky. Sure enough, the heaven-opening state is just a plate of loose sand that borrowed part of its power. If it really is the power of the heaven-opening state, I can't come here at all. Han Fei reached out and grabbed the fruit suspended in the air. Unfortunately, without the demon purification pot, he couldn't see what it was. However, this fruit was transparent. It looked like a light green glass ball, and there was a dense flow of gas inside. After a moment, Simp Dog's eyes widened. Master, will you let me eat it? This thing looks delicious. Fuck off. I haven't eaten it before. How can you eat it? After a moment, when Han Fei rode Simp Dog back to the 9 Dragons' divine fire shield, Sun Yukai and the others couldn't help but exclaim, Captain, you finished it? This is the devouring insect. The power of the heaven-opening state. The group of people swallowed frantically. Originally, when the 9 Dragons' divine fire shield fell, they were very regretful. They shouldn't have let their captain waste such a good sea-quelling bizarre treasure. However, it had only been a few minutes. This sandstorm of hundreds of thousands of kilometers was penetrated? Han Fei said indifferently, there has never been a heaven-opening state creature here. The devouring insect just borrows the power of the origin of the world, and its main power is devouring. It doesn't have a strong combat attribute. Otherwise, if it was a heaven-opening state powerhouse, you wouldn't be able to resist a tentacle. This thing only looks like a bluff. With that said, Han Fei took out the fruit he had grabbed without hesitation. Although he wasn't sure if this thing was the origin of the world. But it must have something to do with the origin of the world, because the entire sandstorm was supported by the power of this thing. At this moment, everyone looked at the fruit that Han Fei took out and exclaimed, "Is this the origin of the world?" Han Fei shrugged. "I don't know. Do you know it?" Sun Yukai nodded. "I'm not sure. Such a high-level thing is generally qualified to be obtained by a heaven-opening state powerhouse. We've never seen it before either." Jun Xing said, "Captain, in any case, this must be a good thing. With your current achievements, you can totally convince everyone to take this thing for yourself. It's true that we are here to look for natural treasures, but this intelligence is obviously wrong. The devouring insect is such a dangerous creature, but it gave us a 9-star intelligence. The sender of this information was either a mistake, or there was something wrong with this person. He had deliberately released this information. So, in any case, you can take this thing, Captain." Han Fei nodded slightly. "Continue to explore. Since it's a good thing, let's see how much there is." With that, Han Fei was about to put this thing into the Origin Sea for temporary storage, which any normal person would do. However, the moment Han Fei put the fruit into the Origin Sea suddenly exploded. Air billowed around Han Fei, and Sun Yukai and the others were directly shaken away. Han Fei said with great difficulty, "This thing can't be put into the Origin Sea. Protect me." The land in Han Fei's Origin Sea was becoming stronger at a speed visible to the naked eye. To be specific, the entire Origin Sea was full of infinite vitality, a large number of spiritual plants were growing, and the Origin Sea could even slowly and autonomously produce chaotic energy. This feeling was like the arrival of spring and the revival of all things. The world in his Origin Sea was more like a real world now. Han Fei had a sudden realization. This thing was more than 10 times better than the mystic yellow soil. Although the mystic yellow soil could consolidate the Origin Sea, it could only strengthen the land in the Origin Sea. But this world's origin could strengthen the Origin Sea in all aspects, so that the resources in the Origin Sea could be more fully integrated with the Origin Sea. To put it bluntly, although this world's origin couldn't make a big breakthrough in strength, it made Han Fei feel that his potential suddenly skyrocketed. One day later, the world's origin finally stopped, and Han Fei felt that his strength had been improved by less than 5%. But the improvement of his potential seemed to be unknown, which might only be known after actual combat. Besides, he felt that this fruit was not enough. Because he didn't feel the upper limit, which meant that this thing was completely within his capacity. No wonder the people of the Sea Realm are crazy about exploring the starting land. This is just a primitive graveyard that has just shown signs of recovery, and someone came to steal the world's origin here. What if it's the real starting land? Han Fei thought to himself. The world's origin in the chaotic ocean could already give birth to a powerhouse at the peak of the heaven-opening state. How strong would its origin be? Chapter 2171. After tasting the power of the origin of the world, Han Fei felt that he had even been sublimated. When Han Fei woke up, Sun Yukai and the others couldn't help but ask curiously, "Captain, what's the smell?" Han Fei shrugged. "No smell. However, this thing can enhance one's potential." Sun Yukai looked at him in surprise. If it could enhance one's potential, wouldn't it increase the upper limit of a cultivator's growth? Jun Xing nodded. No wonder, such a good thing, no wonder the primitive city took action so quickly. Now, this thing is taken by the captain. Let's make them regret it. Captain, should we look again? What if there are more of this thing? Suddenly, Sun Yukai and the others looked at Jun Xing like he was a fool. Are you stupid? Except for the captain, no one else can match this terrifying sandstorm. Do you still want to look for it? However, someone said, we can look for it, but I think we should be more cautious next. At least don't become a burden. Han Fei shook his head. How can there be so many good things waiting for us in the world? Besides, because we killed this devouring worm, I don't know if the people of the primitive city will know in advance. Jun Xing, go back with Long Air and Su Jin first and report the problem of the intelligence immediately. Immediately send someone to take over. The origin of the world here is indeed recovering. Sun Yukai and the others, search with me again. If we don't encounter any more devouring worms in a month, leave immediately. Yes, Captain. Jun Xing and the others left in a hurry, and Han Fei and the others continued to search. During this period, Han Fei continued to search with the nautical panorama. The devouring worms were confirmed to be gone, but Han Fei found that the origin of the world was still there. So, after another half a month or so, they came to an abyss cave. Within 1,000,000 kilometers of this cave, it was full of vitality, and the strongest creatures had reached the explorer realm. And in that cave, some special power was escaping. Han Fei felt that this was the origin of the world. However, when they were excited to stay here and absorb the origin of the world, Han Fei found that this power dissipated too slowly. Han Fei, however, found that the rate of dissipation was too slow. It would be almost impossible for him to achieve the same effect as when he absorbed the origin of the world in 1,000 years. When Han Fei measured this abyss cave with the 9-palace destiny ruler, the test result turned out to be desperate, which directly predicted that he would die. Han Fei didn't think it was necessary to take this risk. This time, he had obtained quite a lot of world origin energy. At least part of his strength had been consolidated and strengthened in one go. His origin sea had also greatly improved, and the opportunity to merge with the heavenly Tao had also appeared. To put it bluntly, the body of Neza, which originally needed 1,000 years of training, now only needed 500 years of training. This was one of the powerful functions of the world origin. 1 month later, Han Fei led Sun Yukai and the others back to the exit, but at this moment, they all looked very gloomy. Sun Yukai, Captain, there's a problem. Han Fei nodded slightly. Jun Xing and the other two went back to report their work, so someone should be here to pick them up. But there was no response from the exit. Someone said, "Oh no. It's impossible that Jun Xing and the others don't even understand this. We are still in the primitive cemetery. Out of caution, they will definitely come to our aid. But now, Is there a trap outside? Han Fei said, if I'm not mistaken, something must have happened to Jun Xing and the others. However, the life tablets they left with me were not broken. There's only one result. They were captured. Everyone was shocked. Sun Yukai said, then what should we do? They captured the three of them at once and didn't even give them a chance to self-destruct. Did the other party break the rules of the tomb battlefield and let a heaven-opening realm master take action? Han Fei shook his head slightly. Not necessarily. It may also be the descend technique. What Han Fei was thinking about was the Yin family's descend technique. He had seen Enbalan's descend technique, which could descend a massive amount of power on an emperor through the world entrance, making that person directly have the combat power of an emperor. He had to admit that this kind of descend technique was indeed terrifying. After pondering for a moment, Han Fei said, you enter my source C. Sun Yukai and the others were shocked. Captain, what if the other party is really a heaven-opening realm master? Why don't we wait inside for another 2 years? Han Fei shook his head. So what if we wait for another 2 years? If the camp only sends some more teams, we will also fall into the enemy's ambush. I also want to feel how strong a heaven-opening realm master is. Sun Yukai and the others had always known that Han Fei was not an ordinary person. In the past 2 years, they had followed Han Fei and gained a lot of benefits. But now, they heard that Han Fei wanted to fight a heaven-opening realm master as a sea-opening realm master. How brave and broad-minded he was. If this battle was successful, this team would almost come to an end. And Han Fei would definitely become a key character to be trained, or he would enter the Heavenly Talent Trial field to participate in some more difficult combat tasks. Outside, just as they expected, Jun Xing and the other two were indeed controlled. Led by a heaven-opening realm master, 12 sea-opening realm masters were suppressing the 3 of them in the square formation. However, the 3 of them were all bruised at the moment and looked extremely weak, as if they had been reborn several times. Jun Xing roared, the tomb battlefield doesn't allow heaven-opening realm masters to take action, and your strength has already exceeded the scope of the sea-opening realm. If my Wanderer City knows about this, even if we chase you to your primitive city, we will kill you. The leading master sneered. It's just that you are all dead. Who will know? Unfortunately, you didn't come out in the same batch. I didn't expect that guy named Neza to have the strength to kill the devouring worm. It would be a pity not to obliterate such a heavenly talent. Right at this moment, a spatial tunnel opened up. Just as the Origin City cultivators were about to make their move, a spatial tunnel suddenly opened up. Within the passageway, a heavenly sword light stabbed out. They discovered the ambush in advance? Captain, run. At that moment, Jun Xing roared. Since they've come out, you're useless. Bam, bam, bam. On the primitive city side, the leading master slapped the heads of Jun Xing and the others several times in a row. How could Jun Xing and the others deal with the power of a heaven-opening realm master? The people of the primitive city were only slightly surprised and had already rushed towards where Han Fei was. Even if Han Fei controlled the heaven-opening sword manual, he couldn't penetrate all the power of these people with one sword strike. However, under Han Fei's sword strike, the few kings who rushed at the front were still injured. When Han Fei came out, he saw a crack in the Dao. Jun Xing and the other 2 were killed on the spot by the people of the primitive city in the blink of an eye. Suddenly, Han Fei's heart was full of anger. What a primitive city! Do the strong people nowadays play ambush tactics? The person from the primitive city laughed. Oh, you should be that. Neza, who has been very famous recently, right? I heard that you are very powerful. It happens that I like to torture and kill heavenly talents. Today, I'll send you on your way. Han Fei sneered. Only 12 of you? Can such a small number of people defeat me? Arrogant. Sky-ceiling battle formation. Except for the leader, the others stood proudly in the void, the triangular divine mark between their eyebrows shining, and the void within a radius of more than 10,000 kilometers froze. Then, these 12 people, each holding a sword, turned the void into a sea of swords. The leader looked at Han Fei with a smile and said, The most damnable thing is that you stole the origin of the world that should have belonged to me. I will open your sea of origin and take back everything that should have belonged to me. In the blink of an eye, Han Fei turned into a three-headed and six-armed form, with the fire-tipped spear, the chaotic sky silk, the universe ring, and the yin-yang sword in his hands. Different from his original body, who had many trump cards and super-explosive power, the body of Neza was better at fighting in chaos. His figure flashed in this sea of swords. Fighting with these pioneer sea realm cultivators of the primitive city, the leader of the primitive city just wanted to watch the show. However, when Han Fei's spear light, which contained the aura of the heavenly law, directly pierced a king. No, how can a mere pioneer sea realm cultivator be so strong? Seeing that the situation was not right, this person immediately took action. However, a strange flame descended from the sky and encapsulated the entire space. 9 dragons spat out fire and surrounded this person. Open. With the eruption of this person's triangular divine seal, the 9 fire dragons collapsed, but in the blink of an eye, they condensed again. Han Fei sneered. This is an ultra-quality sea-quelling bizarre treasure. You're just using part of the power of the arrival technique. How can you break it? Then Han Fei put his hands together. 9 dragons trap array. Even though that person had the combat power of the pioneer sea realm, he was trapped by the 9 dragons' divine fire shield for a while. Then he saw a gorgeous performance. Han Fei's battle suit shattered, a large number of strange Dao patterns appeared on his body, and flames burst out of Han Fei's body. Although Neza was an incarnation, he didn't lack trump cards. Even if these trump cards weren't strong enough compared to his original body, the great techniques that Neza cultivated were also the strongest techniques deduced by the demon purification pot. Swish, 1 sword opened the heavenly gate, 1 sword killed a king. The yin-yang sword turned into a millstone, frantically sucking the power of the kings. On the chaotic sky silk, Dao patterns appeared, and killing arrays appeared frequently. 1 sword shot out, 1 died. 1 spear shot out, 1 died. Han Fei stood tall and straight, like a swimming elf in the flames. Every time he appeared, a king died. When all the kings were killed, Han Fei stretched out his hand, the universe ring returned, the chaotic sky silk returned, and the yin-yang sword merged into one. The fire-tipped spear pointed at the pioneer sea realm who was attacked by the 9 dragons. I like your stupidity. Now it's one-on-one. You can fight one-on-one. Chapter 2172. Han Fei's body was smashed to the bottom of the sea, causing a tremor within a radius of tens of thousands of kilometers. Finally, the power of this guy from the primitive city seemed to have weakened. Han Fei smiled and said, "Let's continue. Let's see if the people from the primitive city or the wanderer city arrive first." The strong man from the primitive city was also shocked and couldn't believe it. How could this guy be so good at fighting? His strength was indeed at the peak of the pioneer sea state, but his physique and means were a bit too outrageous. From the beginning, Han Fei fought with a lot of treasures, but in the end, Han Fei only relied on a long spear. He was constantly testing his limits. Originally, because Neza's clone was refined by the Water Immortal's original body, the Water Immortal's original body was not yet at the sky-opening realm, so its potential was relatively limited. Although the Water Immortal died young, there might be a lot of room for improvement. However, the clone that Han Fei created was still a little lacking. When the bloodline level and talent abilities of his original body were improving by leaps and bounds, Neza's clone didn't improve so dramatically. He was growing like an ordinary king. Although he had the resources and techniques from his original body, he was still at the pioneer sea state. Therefore, in the battle against this strong man from the primitive city who had the combat power of the heaven-opening state, Han Fei didn't gain any advantage. However, he knew that the world origin had allowed his potential to increase by leaps and bounds. His endurance and potential had increased by about 30%. Although his soul and strength hadn't changed much, the utilization of this body had suddenly increased too much. This kind of improvement was comparable to the skyrocketing bloodline level. However, It was already his limit to barely resist the combat power of someone who had just entered the heaven-opening state. Under the suppression of the opponent's great path, the possibility of him winning was also very small. Barely speaking, he was invincible. Of course, this was also because the opponent was only at the heaven-opening state through the god's arrival technique. If the opponent's original body was here, Han Fei might not be his match. Therefore, the combat power of Neza's clone was still not comparable to his original body. However, he saw an alternative way to improve, which was to devour the world source. At this moment, Han Fei grinned and said, "If I don't die, the traitors you hid in the Wanderer City will die. Also, you touched my people. I will take revenge for this enmity. Primitive City, you'd better send some of your true geniuses over. Otherwise, I'll crush you in the Battle of Kings in the graveyard battlefield." At this moment, Han Fei sensed something, and several figures came from afar. Among them, Han Fei knew Jiang Buping, and Han Fei didn't know the other one, but he seemed to be from the Wanderer City too. Han Fei looked at the man. "Look, the people from your primitive city haven't arrived yet." Buzz, the power on this person's body receded like a flood. In the end, the man tried to blow himself up, and Han Fei shouted, "Nine-tailed mantis shrimp." Whoosh, 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 9 chains locked down the void, and a storm of chains locked down the void. The king, who was preparing to self-detonate, had his soul locked down and was unable to self-detonate. "Heh!" Han Fei sneered. "If you have the guts, you can detonate the power of your arrival. You want to detonate yourself in front of me, leaving a king behind?" Swish, swish. Jiang Buping, a burly bald man, descended. The bald man grabbed the king of the primitive city and began to search his soul. Clanged. Han Fei carried the fire-tipped spear on his shoulder and knocked it heavily. He looked at Jiang Buping and said, "This intelligence is wrong. There is a traitor on our side." Jiang Buping looked at the battlefield spanning hundreds of thousands of kilometers, and then at Han Fei, whose battle suit was broken and cracked everywhere. He couldn't help but take a deep breath. When we found out that there was a fall in this place, we had already begun to keep an eye on the informant. Those who are related to this intelligence will be investigated thoroughly. He can't escape. What's the situation on your side? Han Fei twisted his head and said, "This primitive graveyard has indeed recovered a little, but the primitive city has long known about it and planted devouring worms in it. Fortunately, the devouring worm was not strong enough, so I killed it." Jiang Buping's face changed, and then the corners of his mouth trembled. "What the hell is this? A single person killed a devouring worm? And he's so calm?" Jiang Buping said, "I'm talking about this battle. Were you ambushed? Only Jun Xing, Long Air, and Su Zhen's life tablets are broken. What about the others?" Han Fei smiled. "There is a heaven-opening realm powerhouse from the primitive city. He used the god's arrival technique and barely has the power of someone who has just entered the heaven-opening realm. It's hard to beat him." The bald man who was searching the soul next door couldn't help but glance at Han Fei when he heard the word, "hard to beat." Jiang Buping, "Oh no." With a thought, Han Fei released Sun Yukai and the other 3 from the Origin Sea. As soon as they came out, Sun Yukai saw Jiang Buping at a glance. When he saw the bald man, he couldn't help but gasp. "Master Xingyu?" Han Fei frowned. "Is this Xingyu?" One of the 4 generals of the Wanderer City, responsible for the entire graveyard battlefield camp. It was said that this person was a body cultivator. He could withstand the attack of a heaven-opening realm powerhouse with his physique alone, break a sea-quelling bizarre treasure with his bare hands, and survive a finger attack from a venerable emperor. When Sun Yukai saw that even Master Xingyu was here, he was finally relieved. Then he asked Han Fei, "Captain, Jun Xing and the others?" Han Fei said, "They died. There was no time to save them. There was no chance." Suddenly, Sun Yukai and the others looked solemn. They didn't expect that the farewell in the primitive graveyard would be a farewell forever. They looked solemn, but Han Fei didn't see much sadness. But from their eyes, Han Fei saw a more determined attitude. Han Fei knew that this was faith. Jun Xing and the others should have died for faith. At this time, Xingyu suddenly said, "Are you Neza?" Han Fei nodded slightly. Even though he knew that Xing Yu was one of the 4 generals, the strong had to have the pride of the strong. There was no respect in Han Fei's eyes, but a strong fighting intent. "It's me." Seeing Han Fei's attitude, Jiang Buping had a headache. Neza's arrogance was extremely rare. Generally, kings were arrogant, but Han Fei's had risen to a very high level. He was clearly a king, but he behaved like a fucking emperor. Sometimes, even Jiang Buping felt that he was a little too conceited. Xing Yu couldn't help but smile. "One sky opening, 11 kings, and you killed them all alone. Not bad." Han Fei was not moved by this praise at all. He said, "I swallowed a world source, which stimulated my potential. Otherwise, it would have been difficult for me to fight." With that, Han Fei gestured. "It's this big. When I put it into the Sea of Source, it automatically fused with the Sea of Source." Xing Yu said, "That's not big. If there is more time, this revived primitive graveyard can probably provide at least 3 to 5 world origins of that size." Wow, even Han Fei couldn't help but be shocked when he heard this. So many? He only ate one and felt that his potential had been greatly improved. If he ate 3 to 5 of them, he might really be able to fight a sky-opening powerhouse. Xing Yu stretched out his hand and squeezed, directly crushing the king in his hand. What a traitor! What a primitive city! Then Xing Yu looked at Han Fei. "I heard from old Jiang that you are going to join the Wanderer City, but will eventually leave?" Han Fei nodded. "Of course, it is my destiny to wander, and it is also my destiny to become stronger. When the Wanderer City can no longer help me continue to improve, I will choose to leave." As he spoke, Han Fei looked straight at Xing Yu without dodging his eyes at all. Xing Yu's eyes were very dignified, but Han Fei's eyes didn't waver at all. Jiang Buping, Sun Yukai, and the others listened and only felt that what Han Fei said was actually quite normal. A heavenly talent like Han Fei couldn't be regarded as an ordinary king at all. He was a real heavenly talent. Even Sun Yukai and the others felt that Han Fei might have the potential to become a Taoist. And Jiang Buping only felt that it was only a matter of time before a character like Han Fei opened the sky, so it was only a matter of time before he left the Wanderer City. Xing Yu asked, "What do you want?" Xing Yu naturally knew that it was not difficult for Han Fei to open the sky. But with such a proud character, he would not do such a thing as betrayal, because he disdained it. Jiang Buping couldn't understand it, but he could. So, Xing Yu just asked, "What do you want?" Han Fei glanced at Sun Yukai and the others. "A trial of this level is not enough. I need more battles, stronger opponents, and I need the origin of the world." Xing Yu said, "I'll give you a chance to grab it yourself, okay?" Han Fei's eyes lit up. "Okay." Xing Yu said, "I have a special team here. Join them. Your opponents will be the strongest batch of heavenly talents in the primitive city and the Wanderer City. Over there, everyone had a trump card. The strongest combat power they can exert may reach the heaven-opening realm. In addition to the enemies of these 2 main cities, you may also encounter some dangers of the awakened primitive graveyard itself. Although I know your answer, I still have to ask." Sun Yukai and the others widened their eyes. Could it be the heaven-chosen team that was said to have been selected after countless selections in the entire Wanderer City? Jiang Buping sighed slightly in his heart. Sure enough, a real heavenly talent would shine wherever he went. If he joined that team, he would have a high chance of becoming a venerable emperor. Han Fei naturally noticed the change in the faces of Sun Yukai and Jiang Buping, but he didn't care. Because his goal was to surpass the Lord of Silence, so the mysterious team in the Wanderer City was just the beginning for him. Han Fei said, "I just said that I will fight until the primitive city collapses." Xing Yu nodded. "Okay, but before joining this team, you may need to go to the Wanderer City. Because those who can join this team must be seen by the Lord of Silence in person." Han Fei's heart thumped. He didn't expect to see Gu Tingnan here. Han Fei nodded slightly. "Okay." Seeing this, Xing Yu smiled slightly and then looked at Jiang Buping. "From today on, Neza will leave your camp." Chapter 2173. A month later, Han Fei came to the legendary city of Wanderers, A city where all races were equal and everything was free. No one sent him here. He had been riding the heavenly hound all the way here. Because it was a strange city, Han Fei didn't scan it with his perception at the beginning. However, when Han Fei came to the outskirts of the city, a human girl flew over as soon as she arrived. Hey! Here, Han Fei looked in the direction of the voice and saw a human girl flashing in front of him. She was a head shorter than him, agile, well-dressed, and had a strong aura. There was a faint murderous aura in her that couldn't be hidden. Chaotic energy was flowing in her body, and her blood was vigorous. A peak stage sea expansion realm? Han Fei didn't expect to see a peak stage sea expansion realm powerhouse as soon as he came to the City of Wanderers. And it seemed that she was not an ordinary peak stage sea expansion realm powerhouse. Han Fei tilted his head and looked at her. What's up? You are riding a big dog. Neza, right? I'm waiting for you. Han Fei frowned. You are? The girl smiled. Long Yu human. I know you came from the graveyard battlefield. Let me show you around the City of Wonders. Han Fei said lightly, a peak stage sea expansion realm powerhouse as a tour guide? Or are you a member of the Heaven Chosen team so free? Long Yu couldn't help but ask, have you guessed it? Han Fei shrugged. A peak stage sea expansion realm powerhouse. I can vaguely feel that your aura is trying to suppress me. I don't believe that anyone can affect my aura in the City of Wanderers. What's wrong? Aren't you afraid that someone will recognize you by appearing here so openly? Boring. Long Yu curled her lips slightly. So what? There are no secrets in the City of Wanderers. Besides, the Heaven Chosen team is very busy most of the time. There are so many people in this city. How can everyone know me? Walking in this city, most people will only think that you are an ordinary person. As long as you don't shout that you are a member of the Heaven Chosen team, people won't look at you. Even if you shout that you are a member of the Heaven Chosen team, most people still don't know you, because many people don't know this team at all. Only when you reach the Sea Expansion Realm can you learn about the existence of a team like the Heaven Chosen team. Looks like he's a chatterbox. Seeing Long Yu rambling on and on, Han Fei immediately understood Long Yu's personality. Although she was valiant and capable, she was definitely a chatterbox. This was probably why she came to be his guide. Let's go into the city. Aren't we going to see the Lord of Silence? Long Yu, you want to see him immediately? You don't want to walk around the city? There are a lot of resources to be bought and sold here. There are auctions, treasure pavilions, and even roadside stalls. Where did these treasures come from? Long Yu, I fought it out. He snatched it. They were dug up from primitive cemeteries. Anyway, there are many sources. The two of them chatted as they walked. Long Yu said, our Wanderer City has gathered countless wanderers of various races, and there are many people who know strange techniques and special skills. For example, our Wanderer City has more than a dozen races that specialize in refining equipment and elixirs. There are also the Orc clan, Half-Orc clan, some Insect clan, Demon Plant clan. Well, we have a lot of Demon Plant clan here. They can give birth to many spiritual fruits and resources. There are also the 10,000 clan combat skill exchange, where there are combat skills and cultivation techniques of countless races. Some people specially try to integrate various combat skills, and some people study cultivation techniques. You will definitely benefit a lot from there. Is there anyone who sells world origins? Long Yu twitched the corner of her mouth. Brother, you have a big appetite. If there is a world origin, people will go crazy for it. Do you think they will keep it for you? They will definitely use it for themselves. Who knows if there will be people who can't use it at all? Long Yu was speechless. What kind of logic is this? How strong must a person be to be unable to use the world origin? An emperor? Long Yu said, anyway, you can have everything except the world origin. There is a special resource matching shop in the Origin Sea. As long as you have money, you can match as many resources as possible and put them into the Origin Sea. Do you want to fill up the Origin Sea in an instant? Yes, it has been filled. Long Yu was speechless again. Can we still have a good chat? She said, So, now your origin sea has been opened to the limit, and your resources have been filled. Do you lack chaotic energy? Han Fei shook his head. Long Yu asked, do you want immortal spiritual energy? Han Fei nodded. Yes, quite a lot. Long Yu asked, what about ultra-quality sea quelling bizarre treasures? I have 5 or 6. Long Yu was stunned. She stood still and looked at Han Fei. Tycoon, let's be friends, okay? I don't want to work hard anymore. Han Fei chuckled. But then wait for me to prove my Tao first. Long Yu was immediately discouraged. She knew that a strong master would come, but she didn't expect that a tycoon would come. It didn't lack anything except for the world's origin energy. Wouldn't you be angry? He wanted to show off the rich resources of the Wanderer City, but he failed. Long Yu said, I heard that you fought Sky Splitter alone and killed 11 kings? Han Fei asked, you know that too? Long Yu said, of course. Everyone in the Heaven Chosen team knows about it. Many people want to learn from you. Han Fei said, then let's talk about it after I go in. How about you introduce the Wanderer City to me while we walk? Then we can go straight to see the Lord of Silence? Long Yu scoffed. You are really boring. What else can I tell you except for resources? Han Fei said, humanities. Long Yu opened her mouth. But you are really good. You are the first person who only listened to humanities before entering the Heaven Chosen team. This is the city. In fact, you can release your perception freely. No one cares about you here as long as you don't peep at girls. You see, the streets are full of people of all races. Well, at present, there are 3,036 races in the Wanderer City. Among them, the human population accounts for about 1%, which is a very high proportion. Just as Long Yu was talking, she saw a cluster of flowers, stepping on their roots and running quickly on the ground, coming to Han Fei. Brother, do you want to buy flowers? Buy a flower for this beautiful sister? It's very cheap, only an explorer-level energy crystal. Han Fei. Long Yu immediately shut up and looked at Han Fei curiously, wondering what Han Fei was going to do. Han Fei took out an energy crystal and handed it over without hesitation. He didn't want to buy flowers, but he just wanted to see where this flower demon would take out flowers from. Was she going to pick them from him? As soon as she saw Han Fei take out the energy crystal, a big red flower grew out of the top of the little flower demon's cluster, and its roots were directly cut off and sent to Han Fei by the tentacles of the flower tentacles. Thank you, brother. Seeing the little flower demon run away, Han Fei said in surprise, she gave away part of her body. Isn't she afraid that someone will refine her essence blood and extract her soul mark? Long Yu giggled. Of course not. Because this is the Wanderer City. And this flower will wither after a day, and that wisp of power will return to her body. Han Fei thought to himself, so I just bought loneliness? Then Han Fei handed the big red flower to Long Yu. This is for you. Thank you. But I think we should leave here as soon as possible. Han Fei wondered, why? Long Yu didn't speak, but soon she saw a group of hundreds of strange races rushing towards Han Fei. There was a fruit fairy with a fruit hanging on her head, a little red fatty who looked like a pill furnace, spitting out pills from his mouth, and a tree demon who cut open his wrist and poured a drink. Han Fei's face immediately darkened. Fuck, I bought your flower. How dare you betray me? Han Fei looked at Long Yu, and Long Yu shrugged and said, well, this is the culture of the Wanderer City. Everyone takes good care of the children's growth. If you buy a flower, it means that you are a relatively resourceful expert. Come on, it's time for you to show your love. Don't worry, the little flower demon knows what to do. He won't call more than 100 people. The corners of Han Fei's mouth twitched. There were exactly 100 people, no more, no less. Brother, buy a sweet pill. It can make people feel happy. Brother, the sister next to you wants to drink tree juice. Give me 2 cups. Brother, I just grew a fruit. I only grow one a month. It's just an energy crystal. Brother, what could Han Fei do in the face of a bunch of half-grown children? He could only pay. When Han Fei's 100 energy crystals were gone, he only held a cup of tree juice in his hand, while Long Yu was eating happily. She had a drink in her left hand and a fruit in her right hand. The sweet pill was still flying in her mouth, and she chewed it crisply. Long Yu said, "This kind of thing happens all the time. When everyone is happy, they will come to share their wealth. Well, we have a lot of delicious food here, such as the ones I'm eating now. I like sweet pills best. They're super sweet." Han Fei said, "Well, let's go to see the Lord of Silence as soon as possible." Slurp. Long Yu finished the tree juice drink in one gulp and said, "Let's go." The Wanderer City is a place where everyone lives. When they are tired of fighting, they can come here to stay for a few days. It's not a bad idea to stroll around. The main feature of the whole city is life. People separated their lives and cultivation very much. But in fact, it's no different from other cities. They will also die, but they all die silently. The city is still peaceful. This is the culture of the Wanderer City. Chapter 2174. After seeing the prosperity and harmony of the city of wanderers, Han Fei finally understood why these wanderers worshipped Gu Tingnan as a god. A man who could build a city like this must have a high social status. Therefore, Han Fei realized what these people believed in. All the wanderers needed a harbor, and the city of wanderers was one of them. They could be more ruthless than anyone outside, but in the city, they were just high-quality citizens who were amiable. The killings outside wouldn't be brought back to the city, which was one of their principles. After a while, Han Fei saw where the Master of Silence lived. It was an ice palace that was less than 2,000 kilometers above the sea in the sky above the city. There were many people living in these ice crystals. He was probably the most powerful emperor in the world. At least he was friendly. Outside the palace, Long Yu said with a smile, "I'll wait for you outside. My master is very amiable. Don't feel pressured." Han Fei smiled at Long Yu. This girl was a bit talkative, but she wasn't bad. The killings didn't bury her wisdom. He had to admit that Gu Tingnan was also a meticulous person. This was an ice palace, but he had planted flowers and plants here, built a place that looked like a courtyard, and even made doors and windows as well as furniture. Han Fei didn't use his perception to check. He just walked forward. After passing the courtyard, under a tree, Han Fei saw Duan Qingxi who was sitting on the grass, leaning against a tree and reading some books. Han Fei had never expected that Duan Qingxi, one of the 4 generals of the City of Wanderers, would be here. However, her hair was black and beautiful. At this moment, she was sitting on the ground casually, like a woman basking in the sun. When Han Fei passed by Duan Qingxi, he found that this emperor was eating sweet pills. Furthermore, there was a jar full of sweet pills beside her. She was going to eat them as snacks. Duan Qingxi didn't even need to look up to know that Han Fei was staring at the sweet pills. She couldn't help but frown and look up. "Do you want one?" What else could Han Fei say? He nodded. So, Duan Qingxi flicked her fingers and a sweet pill flew to Han Fei. Han Fei pinched it with 2 fingers and stuffed it into his mouth. Crack, crack, sigh. "It seems really sweet. Thanks." After saying that, Han Fei walked into the palace. Duan Qingxi was also a little curious. This man didn't greet her at all when he saw her, as if he were looking at an ordinary person. Did he not know her? Even if he didn't know them, he should have heard of them, right? So she raised her head and glanced at Han Fei. Suddenly, Duan Qingxi squinted her eyes. "This back view, come back." Han Fei turned around and heard Duan Qingxi say, "Your name is Neza?" Han Fei nodded slightly. The two of them stared at each other for over 10 breaths of time before Duan Qingxi said, "Go." Rich people should take care of the businesses in the city. The sweet pill is the most delicious pill in the Wanderer City. Han Fei didn't know what to say. Did they advertise the Tian Tian pill? After Han Fei left, Duan Qingxi scratched her head and said to the air, "Tingnan, something's not right. I think I've seen this person before. He seems to be Ren Tianfei that I told you about. His back view is very similar. I'm sure it's the same person. Did he hide his strength? I didn't see it." But then, a voice sounded in Duan Qingxi's head. "He didn't hide his strength, but he is indeed the person you said, but this is not his real body." This is just an incarnation of his. Does that mean that Ren Tianfei is fine? Huh? His incarnation is already so strong? He's trying to steal the title of human emperor from you. To be precise, I can't be called human emperor right now. After all, most humans are still trapped in the scavenger city. Humph. He hasn't proved his Tao yet and he wants to steal the title of human emperor from you? No way. I won't admit it. Han Fei didn't know the conversation between Duan Qingxi and Gu Tingnan. When he saw Gu Tingnan, the guy wasn't wearing a mask. His face wasn't very handsome, but it was chiseled and masculine. He should be the type that women liked. At this moment, Gu Tingnan was playing with the healing divine light in his hand. Yes, he was squeezing the healing divine light as if it were plasticine. Although it was only the size of a palm, it contained terrifying vitality. Han Fei couldn't help but think that this guy's heavenly awakening divine light must be very advanced since it had been 100,000 years. When his real body saw the liquid divine light for the first time, he was already touched. If everything went according to plan, when he saw his real body again, the liquid healing divine light should have been completed. Seeing Gu Tingnan, Han Fei didn't bow to him. No human emperor should bow to a human emperor, even though he was in the Pioneer Sea realm, which was 2 levels lower than Gu Tingnan. You're here? I'm here. The table in Gu Tingnan's house was the kind of square table that could seat 4 people. There was no throne here. He patted the table casually and said, "Sit." Han Fei didn't refuse and sat opposite Gu Tingnan casually. Gu Tingnan looked at him and said casually, "Tell me about the chaotic ocean. It's been 100,000 years. I wonder what it's like now." Han Fei didn't hide anything and quickly told Gu Tingnan about the situation in the chaotic vast sea. The Imperial Palace? Gu Tingnan slightly frowned. I mean, it doesn't make sense that no one can come out after so many years. Is the Imperial Palace really so dangerous? Han Fei said, danger is relative. Besides, it's a good thing that the people inside can't come out. What should they do after they come out? Become slaves of the 10,000 Scales clan. Gu Tingnan slightly nodded and then asked, "How is Xia Hongzhu?" Han Fei said, "She's recovered, but her strength hasn't returned to its peak yet." Gu Tingnan said, "It's a pity that her potential is higher than mine. If it weren't for what happened in the past, she might have already proven her Tao." Han Fei said, "Outsiders can't be trusted. The primitive city is a good example." Gu Tingnan chuckled. "On the other hand, what do you think of the city of wanderers?" Han Fei nodded. "Not bad." Han Fei made an objective comment. Although outsiders couldn't be trusted, the city of wanderers was indeed well built. However, Han Fei thought that the city of wanderers was supported by Gu Tingnan. If Gu Tingnan died, it wouldn't be easy for the city of wanderers to rise again even if he still had faith. Therefore, in the final analysis, the city of wanderers had to be stronger. Only the strong had the right to speak. Gu Tingnan chuckled. "What about you? If you have a plan, control a city. It's not easy to overthrow the city of scavengers in the chaotic wasteland. Although the city of wanderers rose quickly, it doesn't have enough power to resist the city of scavengers and the primitive city." Han Fei said with a smile, "Then why do you still dare to attack the city of scavengers?" Gu Tingnan said, "We have to fight. The Wanderer City could only rely on fearlessness and a life and death struggle. The city of scavengers is rooted here, so they don't dare to fight the city of wanderers. The city of scavengers is also scared of the primitive city, so they won't really fight the city of wanderers." Han Fei said, "But they won't be willing to see you develop. This kind of war will definitely continue. Why, you fought the 3 emperors alone last time. Can you still fight like this?" Gu Tingnan rubbed the healing divine light in his hand a few times before stuffing it into his mouth and swallowing it. "You should know that I have the Apocalypse divine technique. I believe that even if I leave, there must be a legend about me." Han Fei thought, "So what? I can do the Apocalypse divine technique too. But I can't tell you now." Han Fei found that there were no more questions to ask, so he replied, "My plan is to improve my own strength. I can control a lot of the city of scavengers, but it's meaningless. I can't defeat an emperor right now, but what if I rise fast enough? After a pause, Han Fei said, I'm here to visit the city of wanderers and find a place for my incarnation to cultivate. The other is to find a place for my avatar to cultivate. You don't mind if I split open the sky here, do you? Gu Tingnan shrugged slightly. Of course not. You can help me kill so many enemies. Why should I mind? As for the battle for the throne, let's see who can break through the city of wanderers first and save the human race. Han Fei said with a smile, you can't fight for it. It belongs to whoever deserves it. Just let nature take its course. That's true. The two of them were silent for a while. Then will you join the heaven-chosen team? Han Fei said, I have a question to ask. Gu Tingnan said, go ahead. Han Fei asked, how do I find the origin mark or star bead deep in my soul? Gu Tingnan chuckled. You even know about star beads. It seems that you're very fast. Gu Tingnan said, I can't give you a clear answer to this question. It has to do with the strength of your soul. When your soul power reaches a very high level, you can naturally see through your opponent's soul mark at a glance. I can give you a conservative number. After 500 points of spiritual force, your spiritual force will become abnormally powerful. You will be able to find or sense the weak point of the connection between your opponent's spiritual force and the origin C. You will even be able to see through your opponent's origin mark. Oh, no wonder. It turns out that the stronger the soul power, the better. Han Fei got up. Got it. Thank you. Han Fei didn't ask who the person who helped Gu Tingnan was. If he should know, Gu Tingnan wouldn't have kept it a secret. Gu Tingnan didn't mention anything about protecting the chaotic Azure Sea. This meant that the chaotic Azure Sea was temporarily safe. A moment later, outside the palace. Long Yu said in surprise, you're out so soon? How is it? What good things did my master give you? Han Fei couldn't help but look back and then asked blankly, what? Did he give me anything good? Long Yu, well, Han Fei smiled lightly. It doesn't matter. From today on, this is the place where I split open the sky. Chapter 2175. 300 years later. Mountain City. In Han Fei's origin sea in the Lord's mansion. At this moment, a large number of ownerless souls were being devoured and assimilated by Han Fei's soul. Han Fei suddenly opened his eyes, and the tide of energy in his body fluctuated. Han Fei exhaled a mouthful of turbid air and woke up from cultivation. He immediately looked at his personal information. Owner Han Fei level greater than 101, sky opening. C 10,000 family tree, 200016, chaotic energy 2. 12 million, spiritual power, 40866012, perception range 4. 1 million kilometers, powerts 30122625 waves, first spiritual heritage, primordial vein, second spiritual heritage, vein of eternal darkness, first spiritual beast, twin yin-yang spirit swallowing fish, level 95, second spiritual beast, emperor sparrow, level 99, main arts time fishing, level 8 of void fishing, emperor level, divine quality. This was Han Fei's 102nd seclusion. Compared with when he first came to the chaotic wasteland, his strength had actually doubled. Han Fei could have continued to absorb the power of the energy crystals and the ownerless souls. However, it was not enough to just cultivate without experience and battle experience. Relying on pure cultivation to cultivate out of thin air required a long period of time to consolidate it. This was also the reason why Han Fei cultivated slowly and steadily. His goal was not to be as strong as Pan Lydian at the beginning. But now that he had unleashed his full strength, he should be able to enter the 10 Great Lords. However, the problem was that his jade-like bones might not be able to bear the limit of his current strength. Therefore, Han Fei had not only absorbed energy and ownerless souls for such a long time. A small half of his 3 million points of strength came from the hard practice of the void physical refinement technique. During the cultivation process, Han Fei found that a large number of ownerless souls could continue to be integrated into his jade-like bones. And the continuously strengthened jade-like bones were producing liquid jade essence. The golden jade essence could enhance the transformation of his qi and blood. It could also enhance his defense and bone toughness. It could even purify and detoxify. However, the transformation of the golden jade essence was too difficult. Even if Han Fei cultivated intermittently for 300 years, it would still take him 10,000 years. However, Han Fei only refined 8 drops of gold jade essence in total. Not even 1,000th of the fish bones in his body were filled. The difficulty of cultivation made Han Fei realize that he had to cultivate slowly with time and resources. Even if he cultivated for 100,000 years, he might not even be able to reach Pan Li Tian's level. True cultivation still required actual combat, where one had to face a lot of pressure and increase one's potential. Moreover, the resources that he could come into contact with now were no longer enough for his needs. In the near future, he had to think of ways to find better and stronger resources. Han Fei carved seals on the origin sea with the power of his divine soul. 300 years had passed, and it was time for him to leave. Lord's mansion. Han Fei scanned with his perception and said casually, "Come to see me." In a moment, Hong Yu, Ing Yue, and the others had already come to Han Fei. "Your Majesty." Han Fei looked at Hong Yu. "Has anyone come to investigate recently?" Hong Yu said, "Your Majesty, there has always been someone else. A few kings have come to the main city. It seems that they are waiting for you to come out of seclusion." "Well, let them wait for now." Then Han Fei looked at Ing Yue and the others. "These people must be here for 2 things. One of them is to promote me, Xue Fei. When the time comes, you will follow Xue Fei to city number 68. Then Han Fei looked at Hong Yu. "The mountain city is my first plan. Nothing can go wrong here. So, I need you to guard it. If everything goes well, new heaven opening state experts will come soon. Although your origin sea has been established, you are still far from opening the sky. Even if you sense the opportunity of opening the sky, don't worry about it. As for the emperor, leave it to me." Hiss, Hong Yu looked at Han Fei in surprise. "Your Majesty, are you going to do it in the city?" Ing Yue and the others were also shocked. Is it really okay to kill an emperor alone? It must be noted that Han Fei was not just killing an emperor. He was going to refine the emperor into a puppet before he died, which was much more difficult than killing an emperor. Han Fei said, "Don't worry about it." Ing Yue, how is the expansion of your origin sea? Ing Yue and the others bowed. Your Majesty, with enough resources, Ruqing and I have expanded our origin sea to 100,000 kilometers. Chu Lingyu, Jiang Liuyu, and Jiang Ye's origin sea have also reached more than 80,000 kilometers. Han Fei nodded slightly. Not bad, but not enough. You are all talented. In a situation where there are abundant resources, hunting and fighting all over the place, this speed is still slightly slow. Ing Yue and the others looked ashamed. In the past 300 years, with enough resources, their strength had almost doubled. However, so what if it was doubled? It was not enough. After all, they were limited by the lack of battles in the city, and there was no corresponding trial field. Of course, in the past 300 years, they had been crazily practicing the combat skills and techniques Han Fei gave them. Even so, in Han Fei's eyes, they were only not bad. When Ruqing said, "Your Majesty, we will continue to work hard," Han Fei said, "Your Majesty, you lack opponents and can't grow quickly, which is also a problem. Later, I will find a way to create some conditions for you. But for now, you still have to endure." When he arrived at Bayou City on number 68, it would be more dangerous there. Moreover, the number of scavengers that appeared there was also more than in Shanqing. Don't be polite to scavengers. Ing Yue and the others cupped their hands. "Yes, Your Majesty." Han Fei released Xue Fei and disappeared quietly. In the Lord's mansion, Han Fei left a message. "Wait for me to come back. I'll see the envoys from the main cities again." Ing Yue and the others took a deep breath, knowing that they still had to work hard. When Ruqing said, "Senior Hong Yu, Your Majesty seems to be planning something big." Hong Yu smiled and said, "You don't have to worry about Your Majesty's affairs. By the way, go to White Jade City first. The knowledge you have learned on how to manage a city over the years will come in handy." Wow! Jiang Yu, the youngest, said in surprise, "Your Majesty, won't you stay in White Jade City?" Hong Yu sneered. "Why would you stay in White Jade City? How could the human sovereign's plan be limited to just 1 or 2 cities? What he's after is the entire scavenger city. He has been cultivating in seclusion here for 300 years. This is already the longest and most ridiculous seclusion I have ever seen." Jiang Yu said, "But your Majesty often comes out of seclusion. He has come out more than 100 times. Hong Yu immediately frowned. "Talk too much. As long as your Majesty doesn't leave, he is basically in seclusion." Jiang Yu couldn't help but secretly stick out her tongue, thinking that your Majesty's seclusion time was really short. 3 days later, hundreds of millions of kilometers away from the mountain city, Feng Tianyi rushed all the way. 300 years had passed, and he was ordered to take over the mountain city. He didn't expect that he could take over the position of lord as soon as he returned from the graveyard. Although the mountain city was relatively far away, there were still many people who wanted it. If he hadn't commanded the graveyard for 20,000 years, he wouldn't have become the lord of the mountain city. Chirp, tens of thousands of kilometers away, Feng Tianyi suddenly had a thought. A strange black creature appeared in front of him. "That's a bird." Feng Tianyi was a heaven-opening realm expert after all, and he had some knowledge. Although there had never been a bird in the chaotic wasteland, it didn't mean that he hadn't heard of it. Occasionally, some rumors about the divine East Sea would spread to the chaotic wasteland. Therefore, he immediately recognized that it was a bird. An inauspicious bird-type creature. "This is the first time I've seen one." Out of curiosity, Feng Tianyi flew past and arrived in front of the bird-type creature. However, when his eyes met the big bird that he thought was an inauspicious creature, at that moment, Feng Tianyi felt as if he was in a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood. An ancient and wild aura came toward him, and he felt as if he was in a primitive world. The sky was filled with blood. There were giant beasts roaring, wings flying, and ferocious beasts covered in blood rushing toward him. Oh no, this is not an inauspicious creature. Unfortunately, it was too late when Feng Tianyi reacted. When he shattered everything around him, he only saw a cold light. Bam! Feng Tianyi exploded instantly. His body couldn't resist the horrifying sword chi at all and was crushed into pieces. Humph! Han Fei's figure appeared. As he waved his hand, the space within 1,000 kilometers was blocked by a barrier of time. Han Fei fished with a fishing rod and took out the nautical globe. As the nautical globe spun, he pointed his finger and tore open the entrance to Feng Tianyi's origin sea. Half a day later, Han Fei appeared in the outside world, and the puppet Feng Tianyi came out with him. As soon as Han Fei came out, he saw the Emperor Sparrow crushing an ominous creature with its claws. With a casual peck, the ominous creature's energy crystal was swallowed into its stomach. The inauspicious air was also absorbed by the Emperor Sparrow's body. Han Fei's eyelids twitched. "You can eat this? This is an inauspicious mist. It can mess up one's divine soul and make them go crazy." The Emperor Sparrow said indifferently, "Do you know why all races think I'm an inauspicious creature?" Chapter 2176. Although the Emperor Sparrow was Han Fei's spiritual beast, they didn't communicate much with each other. This was the first time the Emperor Sparrow had revealed its ability to devour ominous aura, and it seemed like it was going to tell Han Fei why. Han Fei smiled. "Why do you suddenly want to tell me?" Vermilion Bird said, "There's no special reason. You've already become stronger, although it's not enough. But at the very least, he could be considered an expert. There are some things that I can communicate with you now." Han Fei frowned. "So you never communicated with me before because you thought I was not strong enough? Okay, then let's talk it out today. All these years, I've never fused with you, because I know that you are arrogant. Besides, I don't know how you entered my soul sea and became my spiritual beast. However, I can foresee that you will definitely have a lot of memories with you. I've always been waiting for you to tell me. After all, no matter how strong you were in the past, no matter how you fought against all heaven's experts, but now, you're my spiritual beast, and I'm your master. This can't be changed. In fact, Han Fei really wanted to experience the feeling of fusing with the Emperor Sparrow. Based on the Emperor Sparrow's performance in the past, even though it wasn't as strong as him, its doctrine, heart, aura, and life level were all at the level of venerable sovereigns. From the moment the Emperor Sparrow became his spiritual beast, Han Fei knew that he was raising an Emperor-level master. Because of this, Han Fei was very tolerant of the Arch Sparrow. At the same time, he was also working hard to become stronger. He also wanted to become the master of the Arch Sparrow. Therefore, the fact that the Emperor Sparrow suddenly wanted to communicate with him was a great thing. The Imperial Sparrow said, "The Imperial Sparrow is indestructible. I will die, but I will not perish." Every generation of the Emperor Sparrow would inherit the legacy of the previous generation. Logically speaking, it's impossible for me to become your gifted spiritual beast. This is the only thing that's not reflected in my inherited memory. But since I'll become your spiritual beast, I can only say that you and I should be a strong alliance. Now that I've seen you grow to your current heaven opening stage strength and how you can easily kill heaven opening stage experts, I've once again confirmed that our alliance is a powerful alliance. Han Fei said with a smile, "From what you said, you and I seem to have a great cause to work together, right?" The Emperor Sparrow ignored Han Fei's teasing. "There's one thing that I'm very similar to you." This is also the answer that the previous Emperor Sparrow couldn't find, even though his combat power was comparable to that of a god. Han Fei asked curiously, "What?" The Emperor Sparrow said, "I'm not sure about my Tao heart or my true path." DK said, "Being born as a monarch isn't necessarily a good thing. It could be due to the strength of one's bloodline or inheritance. However, I seem to be lacking a path. Every generation of the Emperor Sparrows sought to return to their ancestral roots, because we wanted to know the secrets of the first-generation Emperor Sparrow. But in this life, I was born as a gifted spiritual beast. I suddenly discovered that in reality, I don't necessarily have to trace back to the exceptional talents. I can also be like you, or even like these millions and millions of creatures, walk a path that belongs to me." Han Fei listened carefully. "So, as a naturally endowed spiritual beast, you were enlightened?" The Emperor Sparrow said, "Not really. I just know the truth, but I'm still far from being enlightened. In the future, if there's a chance, you and I can fight side by side. I mean the kind that can fuse." Han Fei grinned. However, let's get back to the topic at hand. Why can you swallow the ominous aura? The Emperor Sparrow said, "This level of ominous aura isn't really ominous. I, on the other hand, am born to swallow ominous, darkness, extraterrestrial devils, horror. I can swallow most of the negative things in your eyes. Even in the spiritual sea, I can also devour the horror left in the spiritual sea to grow. Of course, it's not that fast. After all, I'm about to open the sky." Han Fei was lost for words. Is there no side effect in such a way of growth? The Emperor Sparrow said, "This is the talent of the Emperor Sparrow bloodline. The ominous aura in the chaotic wasteland is actually a lot of negative emotions, which are equivalent to the darkness of an entire world. They all gather here and break out every once in a while. It's like a curse that keeps haunting me and acting up again and again." Han Fei was confused. Negative emotions? The Emperor Sparrow said, "The so-called negative emotions contain too many things. Maybe too many starting grounds are buried here, and the invisible negative karma has formed the ominous aura. Maybe all the sins in this world are attracted by some kind of power and gather here, breaking out sometimes. Therefore, when mortals touch it, their minds will be disturbed, they will lose their minds, and then they will go crazy. They will be driven by killing, lust, and all the negative emotions and lose their identity." Han Fei was intrigued. "Since you can swallow the ominous aura, will you become stronger because of it?" Han Fei had to guess. If swallowing the ominous aura could make one stronger, then the Emperor Sparrow's growth would be limitless. The Emperor Sparrow said, "Yes. But it will take a long time. I'm more suitable for powers like the primordial evil chi that are full of battle aura. The power in the ominous aura is too heterogeneous. Although I can digest it, the level of the energy isn't high. Unless they could find its source, these ordinary ominous auras wouldn't be of much use. At most, it can become part of my combat power. Han Fei thought, isn't that enough? Han Fei sighed slightly. It's a pity that the ominous aura is inexhaustible. The Emperor Sparrow said, anything that is inexhaustible can only mean that it's ordinary. There are only so few good things. It's impossible for it to give you so many. Han Fei agreed with him, and then he said, then when will you split open the sky? You've been stuck in this bottleneck for a long time, haven't you? The Emperor Sparrow said, I'll wait for the opportunity. It's not the right time yet. I'll consolidate my strength during this period. Aren't you going to the scavenger city? I'm looking forward to how you'll conquer this city. Han Fei sneered. Conquer? That's a long-term plan. Han Fei thought, in fact, I can conquer it now. I can just call him eldest senior brother. But that obviously wouldn't work. This was what the human emperor should do, not eldest senior brother. The scavenger city was the first step for his rise in the sea realm. If he couldn't take this step on his own, how could he, a disciple of the Void Temple and the human emperor, rise in the sea realm? One day later, Mountain City, Feng Tianyi arrived. And Xue Fei announced the successor lord in the city, and the city was directly transferred to Feng Tianyi. In fact, it was just two puppets talking. And the messengers who had come from the main city also waited for Xue Fei to come out of seclusion. In the Lord's mansion, Feng Tianyi and Xue Fei pretended to be polite. This scene was very weird in the eyes of Hong Yu and Ing Yue. They were talking to the human emperor himself. They didn't know what it would feel like to talk to himself. At this moment, the retired Xue Fei received these messengers. The three messengers first cupped their fists and congratulated him. Congratulations, Master Xue Fei, on taking over the White Jade City. Han Fei nodded slightly. Okay, I know why you're here. You can go back first. After I go to the White Jade City to take over, I will naturally take that person to the main city. The three messengers responded respectfully, then we'll have to trouble Lord Xue Fei. Well, Master Xue Fei, the higher-ups said that the taxes of the mountain city will return to normal in the future. Han Fei snorted in his heart, thinking to himself, these stingy guys. However, after 300 years of development, the overall strength of the major villages in the mountain city shouldn't be bad. So Han Fei nodded slightly. But Feng Tianyi will take care of this matter. You don't have to do it. The three messengers were also speechless. The only purpose of their visit was to remind Xue Fei not to forget the two things that he should do. Now that the task was completed, they didn't want to stay in this place. As the saying went, one had to do a good job. On the same day, in the little sea village, Xue Fei came in person, and the pressure of the emperor shocked the whole village. Xue Fei shouted, Yi Fenglu, I promised you that the taxes of the mountain city will be reduced for 300 years. Now, 300 years have passed, and it's time for you to leave with me. All the people in the little sea village, except Zhao Jing, were dumbfounded. It wasn't until they saw Yi Fenglu being taken away that they cried out involuntarily, what? It turns out that the tax reduction for 300 years was exchanged by Yi Fenglu with his future? Damn it, Yi Fenglu didn't tell us this for 300 years? Does he still regard us as his brothers? Someone was speechless. Forget it. It's because he regards us as his brothers that Yi Fenglu did this. With his own strength, he reduced the taxes of the mountain city for 300 years. How ambitious and courageous he is. Chen Qing said, Yi Fenglu is a man who will be recorded in the history of our little sea village. And only Zhao Jing knew the truth of all this. At the moment when she saw Yi Fenglu leave, she knew that this journey would be full of difficulties, and he could only bear it alone. Chapter 2177. The City of Scavengers. Xue Fei led Yi Fenglu into the enemy's city again. Han Fei had been planning this for 300 years, but the time hadn't come yet. Now, Han Fei thought that his strength had reached the peak of a stage. Next, all he had to do was think about how to develop the Origin Sea. This time, Han Fei didn't plan to leave in a short time. Their purpose was not the graveyard battlefield, but a big event that he had been preparing for hundreds of years. He wanted to fight for an opportunity in the city of scavengers. Law enforcement camp, Zhao Honghuang's residence. Since Han Fei had come, he had made full preparations. In the past 300 years, Zhang Daqian's clone had already passed the tribulation and continued to train in the 68 Bayou city with Little Fatty. In these 300 years, with Zhang Daqian's supreme talent, his growth rate wouldn't be much slower than Moon Cherry and the others. Although the Origin Sea hadn't been developed to 100,000 kilometers, it was because Han Fei didn't want to spoil it. Neza's clone could go to the City of Wanderers to train, and Han Fei gave him the Navigator, the 9-Palace Destiny Ruler, and many magic treasures. In the City of Wanderers, Neza's clone would naturally find a lot of battles to digest his growth. However, Zhang Daqian's clone didn't have the same fighting environment as Neza's clone, so now the Origin Sea had only been developed to 70,000 kilometers. With 300 years of hunting, it was barely not spoiling it. However, the follow-up improvement would take time, and during this time, he didn't have to think about it. Now, in the City of Scavengers, as long as Emo Qi didn't betray him, Han Fei was confident that even Emperor Wan Lin wouldn't be able to recognize him. In order to make Emo Qi think that Yi Fenglu was not his real body, Han Fei forcibly sealed his Tao of Time. At this moment, in the depths of the law enforcement camp, Zhao Honghuang was looking at Han Fei. Zhao Honghuang's eyes seemed to have magic power. He seemed to be able to see through Han Fei at a glance. But Han Fei himself was not easy to deal with. He had completely simulated a race from the flesh and blood, to the scales, to the hair, eyelashes, nails, breathing, and the flow of blood in his body, which were completely different from that of the human race. Oh, it's a heavenly heritage. No wonder you were so confident that you wanted to cut taxes for 300 years. A long time later, Zhao Honghuang withdrew his gaze and asked indifferently, "How large is the quintessence sea?" Xue Fei said respectfully, "Lord Primordial Desolation, this child's Origin Sea has already been opened for 70,000 kilometers. 300 years, 70,000 miles? Even Zhao Honghuang could not help but be slightly stunned. This speed was not impossible. If he forcefully used resources and opened up his Origin Sea every day, it was not impossible. Of course, even if they could do it, there weren't many geniuses who could do it. That was why only Inyue and Wen Ruqing's Origin Sea expanded to 100,000 kilometers after Han Fei gave them enough resources. After all, even if there were enough resources, it would take a long time for a king to open an Origin Sea. Inyue and Wen Ruqing were able to open up 100,000 kilometers because they were extremely lacking in resources. Thus, after obtaining resources, their bodies were like a dry desert, madly absorbing them. Another point was that they had already opened up an Origin Sea that was close to 70,000 kilometers long. However, in Zhao Honghuang's opinion, it was not easy for someone who had just reached the sea expansion realm to open a Origin Sea of 70,000 kilometers in 300 years, even if there were enough resources. Zhao Honghuang looked at Han Fei and asked, "Tell me, how long will it take to open up a Origin Sea of 100,000 kilometers?" Han Fei said respectfully, "If there are enough trials, battles, opportunities, and resources, it will take at most 100 years or even less." "You're quite confident." Han Fei saluted. "This is the basic confidence to become a strong master." Zhao Honghuang looked at Han Fei, whose eyes were extremely cold and whose body was emitting murderous intent. He knew that Xue Fei must have trained this person a lot over the years. He even felt that Xue Fei wanted to be Yi Fenglu's guide. Xue Fei even felt that Yi Fenglu would definitely surpass him one day, so he took care of Yi Fenglu so much. However, Zhao Honghuang would never have thought that Han Fei was a fake heavenly talent in disguise. Zhao Honghuang said, "I'll give you 30 years to enter the top 1,000 of the law enforcement camp's sea expansion list. If you can do it, you'll have all the trials, battles, opportunities, and resources you want. If you can't do it, I'll throw you into the graveyard battlefield. You can only return when you kill 100 experts of the same level. Do you have any objections?" Han Fei shook his head. Scavengers had their own way of training experts, and the law enforcement camp was a place to train experts. But no matter what, he would definitely win this bet. Besides, Han Fei never liked to rise slowly. Entering the top 1,000 of the sea expansion list was underestimating him. What he wanted was to rise strongly. Zhao Honghuang casually threw 3 pieces of black soil to Xue Fei and said bluntly, "If this boy is as strong as you expect, I'll give you 3 more pieces of black soil." Xue Fei was overjoyed and said excitedly, "Thank you, Lord Honghuang." Chen Yan. Hearing Zhao Honghuang's order, law enforcer Chen Yan quickly flashed over. "Lord Honghuang, I'm here." Zhao Honghuang said, "This boy doesn't need to be thrown into the newbie camp. Throw him to the Death God Mountain and test his basic strength." The Death God Mountain. Chen Yan couldn't help but look at Han Fei in surprise. Throw him to the Death God Mountain? Chen Yan had been living in the main city for a long time, so he was very smart. It seemed that the seedling Xue Fei trained was very strong. It was rare for one to be sent to the Death God Mountain in 1,000 years. If this boy was really good, then Xue Fei should make friends with him. Chen Yan said, "Brother Xue, then I won't see you off. I'll take Yi Fenglu with me." Xue Fei nodded. "Brother Chen, please." The scavenger city was built on top of a primitive cemetery. There were more than 10 primitive cemeteries that could be reached. Among them, there were 5 or 6 that were specially used for the law enforcement camp's training. Among them, the Death God Mountain was one of the more dangerous ones. It had been personally set up by the emperor and changed into a strength test ground. Although it was a test ground, it was also one of the more dangerous ones. Han Fei didn't have the strength to resist Chen Yan, so in the blink of an eye, Han Fei came to a valley depression deep in the law enforcement camp. There were 6 caves here, enshrouded in colorful light. In this valley depression, Han Fei sensed that thousands of pioneer sea-state kings had set up cave residences here. When Chen Yan brought Han Fei to the entrance of the cave, many people looked at them in confusion. Master Chen Yan brought someone here in person? And a newcomer? What race is that person? Although his body is also covered in scales, he doesn't have a tail. He doesn't seem to be from our 10,000 Scales clan. Please remove the word, seems. He clearly isn't. I wonder what kind of strange race he is. It doesn't matter. We'll know the news in the city tomorrow. But what is this person doing? These are all trial grounds. He's a newcomer. Is he going to start the trial? While the kings were discussing among themselves. In the valley, Chen Yan said to Han Fei, "The Death God Mountain, as its name, is a mountain. There was a testing ground at the top of the mountain. At that time, there would be wave after wave of sea expansion living corpses trying to kill you. The Death God Mountain has no limit. I will judge you based on your combat strength, speed, spirit strength, and other comprehensive strengths. Of course, the premise is that you're alive. Oh, by the way, on the Death God Mountain, you can't connect to the Origin Sea. The origin of the world there is sealed by the Great Emperor. You can only rely on the power stored in your body. How many you can kill depends on your own ability." Then, Chen Yan pointed and said, "That's a void stone tablet, which records the names of the top 100 people of the Death God Mountain. Among them, the last one is Shan Zhe with 356 kills." Han Fei frowned slightly. If they were opponents of the same level, it didn't make sense for one person to kill 356. Even he could kill 356 kings of the same level. Are you kidding me? That was without using the power of the Origin Sea. Therefore, Han Fei was sure that there must be something wrong with the living dead strength. Otherwise, the 100th place on the list would be as strong as the 10 lords. If the scavenger city was so strong, the vagrant city and the primitive city would have been slaughtered long ago. Han Fei said, "Shall we start now?" Chen Yan shook his head slightly. "Sure enough, young people don't know the immensity of heaven and earth." He said, "Just go in from this entrance. Since Xue Fei thinks so highly of you, I'd like to see what's different about you. Go." Around him, the kings couldn't help but be shocked. Someone said in surprise, "Damn it, is a newcomer going to the Death God Mountain?" Someone frowned and guessed, "I guess it's just a test. I don't know how many he can kill." In fact, the living dead in the Death God Mountain are just projections created by the origin of the world. They lack fighting vitality and adaptability. Since this kid was brought here by the law enforcer in person, he must be very strong, but I don't think he'll be able to get on the list. Someone sneered. Isn't that nonsense? How can it be so easy to get on the list? Just wait and see. When this kid comes out, we'll see how many he has killed, and then we'll know his real strength. After Han Fei stepped into the passage, he passed through a chaotic mist and appeared on a dark red mountain. This mountain was 100 kilometers high and looked extremely hard, but it was still full of potholes, full of the chilling atmosphere of a battlefield. After Han Fei appeared, he heard a tremendous amount of roars after only 3 seconds. When he scanned, he found that his perception range was limited to within 1,000 kilometers. And in this area, one after another, dragging broken bodies, they were slowly walking towards the top of the mountain. There were tens of thousands of them. Chapter 2178. Although there were a large number of living dead, their speed of climbing the mountain didn't seem to be fast, and the mountain seemed to be able to exert pressure on them. Only when they reached the top of this mountain would they burst out with the real power of the Pioneer Sea realm. Therefore, the difficulty of this kind of test was continuously increasing. Because from the first living dead, Han Fei would encounter very few enemies. The later he went, the more living dead would climb the mountain, and the more pressure he would face. When the first living dead appeared on the top of the mountain, it was about 10 minutes after Han Fei came in. The moment the pressure caused by the mountain disappeared, the strength of this puppet-like living dead soared to the peak almost in an instant. It formed a fist seal and punched at Han Fei. As the first puppet, Han Fei was ready to collide head-on. With the identity of a genius that he had created for himself, he couldn't be weak in terms of comprehensive ability. Ripples burst out on the mountain, and the body of the living dead cracked. Under Han Fei's punch, its flaws were exposed. Not weak, but not fast enough. There is a Dao, but it seems to be a strength-type Dao. Can a puppet also have a Dao? Han Fei planned to adjust his strength according to the strength of this puppet, so at the beginning he reserved the power of the first punch, so that when he felt the strength of this puppet, he could adjust the upper limit of his strength in time. Therefore, when Han Fei punched for the second time, his strength was adjusted. Bim, with just a single punch, the puppet exploded and continued to crumble. In the dark, Qin Yan and even Zhao Honghuang were watching Han Fei's attack. When Han Fei punched like this, they could instantly judge the strength of Han Fei's punch. The power of Han Fei's first punch was about 150,000 waves. If it was in the chaotic ocean, Han Fei's strength could barely be regarded as good, but in the sea realm, even in the scavenger city, this strength was very ordinary. However, the power of Han Fei's second punch burst out with the power of 230,000 waves, which was already very excellent for Han Fei, who had just opened the sea for 300 years. It must be noted that when Han Fei was level 95, his strength was in the range of 180,000 to 290,000 waves. At that time, Han Fei was already very strong in the chaotic ocean. Therefore, when the power of 230,000 waves burst out, even in the scavenger city, Han Fei's power had surpassed more than 40% of the Pioneer Sea realm experts. However, in the eyes of Qin Yan and Zhao Honghuang, Han Fei obviously didn't use his full strength in this punch, so they estimated that Han Fei's strength was about 300,000 waves. And if Han Fei's strength reached 300,000 waves, it meant that his strength was probably in the top 40% of the law enforcement camp of the scavenger city. Although this power was still not very strong, considering the time it took for Han Fei to become a king, it could not be judged simply by power, but by Han Fei's growth rate. Following the appearance of the first living dead, the second and third appeared one after another. However, this time, the zombie roared and condensed a spiritual puncture with the power of his soul, trying to penetrate Han Fei's soul. A living dead that imitates the divine soul? In the void, an invisible storm of impact appeared, and at the same time, the other living dead's speed was obviously much faster. This person appeared behind Han Fei in an instant and attacked with his sharp claws. Han Fei didn't even look back. He slightly tilted his body and a long knife appeared in his hand. Swish, a cold knife intent burst out, and the speed of this knife intent was far faster than the speed of this living dead. So the living dead was instantly cut in half by Han Fei. And the living dead who was good at soul power was stunned by Han Fei's spiritual shock. The next second, the long knife swept by and was also cut in half. After being beheaded, the bodies of the living dead directly dissipated. They were only imitators of the Pioneer Sea realm, so they would not be reborn. They just had the power of the Pioneer Sea realm. Therefore, after they were beheaded, they would be gone. Only then did Han Fei understand that the so-called top 100 on the Void Stone Steel and killing more than 300 living dead meant that in theory, as long as you were stronger than these living dead, you could reach the Void Stone Steel as long as you unleashed your king's power more than 300 times. If you faced a powerhouse of the Pioneer Sea realm, unleashing your power more than 300 times in a row would be comparable to that of a powerhouse of the same realm, and the basic energy stored in your body might not be enough. Therefore, when fighting these living dead, you need to control the use of your own power. In the void, Chen Yan was recording. Strength, between 250,000 and 300,000 waves. Soul strength, currently more than 500,000 points. Knife Dao, knife intent, good understanding of the way of the knife. However, this was just the beginning. If Han Fei couldn't even defeat the first 3 Pioneer Sea realms, he wouldn't be able to fight in the future. Then, these 3 types of living dead climbed to the top of the mountain one after another. Their number increased from 2, 3, 4, until a dozen appeared. Han Fei's attacks began to become quite conservative. At the beginning, his strength burst out from about 250,000 waves to 220,000 waves, which was just enough to pierce through a strength-type living dead. The strength of his soul attack and combat speed were also adjusted accordingly. In the void, the corners of Chen Yan's mouth curled up slightly. Do you think you can kill more living dead in this way? You underestimate the test of the mountain of death too much. After just half an hour, Han Fei had already pierced through 100 living dead in the Pioneer Sea realm, and Han Fei didn't seem tired at all. However, when the 101st living dead appeared, Han Fei was surprised to find that his punch couldn't pierce through the living dead with one punch. The strength of the living dead has increased, and the improvement is not small. Bam, bam, bam. After a while, when Han Fei killed a dozen living dead, Han Fei couldn't help but notice that the strength of the living dead had generally increased by more than 10% to 20%. The power that Han Fei burst out needed to reach 260,000 waves to pierce through a living dead. Han Fei's heart thumped. The strength of the Pioneer Sea realm suddenly increased by 20%, which was no joke. In other words, every time they killed 100 living dead, their strength would have a significant improvement. According to the list on the Void Stone Steel, the 100th place could only pierce through more than 300 living dead, and it seemed that the difficulty would get higher and higher. Besides, the appearance of the living dead wouldn't give you time to rest. You had to fight continuously, adjust your strength in time, and know how to control the use of the energy stored in your body. Even when the number of living dead increased to as many as a dozen, the 10 Pioneer Sea realm masters attacked together. Even if they were living dead, they couldn't be underestimated. In about half an hour, Han Fei killed another 100 living dead with an average strength of 260,000 waves and a soul of more than 600,000 waves. At this point, Chen Yan had actually nodded slightly. At least, he felt that the seedling sent by Xue Fei was not bad. But Zhao Honghuang didn't respond, which was within his expectation. Xue Fei sacrificed 300 years of taxes to cultivate such a seedling. If he couldn't even kill 200 living dead, it would obviously be a bit exaggerated. In Zhao Honghuang's view, he just wanted to see if Han Fei could kill 300 living dead, which was his standard. When the 200th living dead appeared one after another, Han Fei's strength increased to 310,000 waves. Besides, the scales on his body began to turn slightly red, and so did his eyes. Chen Yan was surprised. Bloodline power? Or a secret method? If it's a secret method, it obviously can't last long, but if its bloodline power. After the 201st living dead appeared, the speed at which the living dead appeared was faster than before. His strength became stronger and the speed at which he climbed to the top of the mountain became faster, and the number of living dead that Han Fei had to fight at the same time increased significantly. Han Fei knew that if he could still defeat them easily at this time, there would be a problem. He had to show something special, that was, the power of his bloodline, so that Qin Yan and the others would mistakenly think that he was bursting out his potential. Boom, boom, boom in the field. Han Fei's fighting speed was getting faster and faster, and his explosive power had to be kept above 310,000 waves and 750,000 points of spiritual power. In Qin Yan's view, he had to maintain this state for half an hour. Generally speaking, only the top 30% of the Pioneer Sea Realm Masters in the Scavenger City could reach this point. And if he wanted to defeat 300 living dead, Han Fei's strength could basically be ranked among the top 5,000 Pioneer Sea Realm Masters in the Scavenger City. Puff, puff, when Han Fei killed more than 260 living dead, his knife Dao began to change. From the previous knife intent to the current knife Dao, the knife Dao and the true meaning of the way of the knife seemed to have increased his strength to the strongest state. At this time, Han Fei had begun to pretend that he was frequently attacked by the living dead. But also at this time, Han Fei's physique showed its power. Chen Yan said, "Master Primeval, this boy's physique seems to be very strong. His endurance and deflection ability are even better than the 10,000 Scales clans. I'm afraid we'll be able to kill 300 living corpses." Zhao Honghuang nodded slightly. Otherwise, Xue Fei wouldn't have spent so much money to train him. When the 301 living dead appeared, Han Fei was panting like he was roaring, and his body almost turned into a flash of light and twisted on the top of the mountain. The scales on Han Fei's body turned completely red, and dense red mist began to escape from his body. At this time, Han Fei no longer fought the living dead with the power of his soul. Instead, he guarded his soul and killed the living dead with his physique and the true meaning of the knife technique. Seeing this, even Zhao Honghuang couldn't help but frown slightly. It said that this man accidentally ate the essence blood of a certain creature. Now it seems that there are signs of atavism. His combat power is passively increasing as the intensity of the battle increases. Although it can't last for a long time, this bloodline is really powerful. At this moment, Han Fei had really entered the role he had created. Among the more than 300 living dead, Han Fei attacked left and right. He was often beaten, but because of his physique, he could withstand it. When he fought back, he could also burst out the power of his bloodline to counterattack. Chen Yan became serious at this time. 350 people. Does this Chen Yan want to rush into the top 100 talents list? Chen Yan couldn't help but be shocked. This kind of potential was beyond his imagination. As Han Fei roared, finally, when he was almost covered in wounds, he used the last bit of his strength to crush 4 kings with a long knife in his hand. The number of their kills was fixed at 357. Chapter 2179. Outside the Mountain of Death. When Han Fei had been in there for more than half an hour, these people finally realized that something was wrong. Someone said in surprise, "Why has this person been in there for so long? Did he die in there?" Someone sneered. "How could he die with Lord Qin Yan watching over him? I don't know why this kid is so lucky to be taken care of by Lord Qin Yan." Then someone wondered, if he hasn't died yet and hasn't come out, is he still fighting? Thinking of this possibility, many people couldn't help but stare at the void steel. Someone said in disbelief, "How strong does a newcomer have to be to kill 100 people on the list? The 100-man list represents the pinnacle of our outer camp's achievements." As soon as he finished his sentence, the last name on the void stone tablet, Shan Zhe, and the record of killing 356 people, suddenly disappeared. It was replaced by a new name, Yi Fenglu. 357 kills. Hiss, how is it possible? Shoot, he's just a newcomer. Are the newcomers so strong now? Chen Yan appeared in the valley carrying Han Fei, who was covered in wounds. Looking at the name on the void steel, which had been replaced by Yi Fenglu, he couldn't help but sigh. It seemed that Xue Fei made the right bet this time. He didn't know why this guy was so lucky to meet such a talent. It seemed that he had to get closer to him in the future. Chen Yan pondered in his heart. When Xue Fei came back to report on his work, Chen Yan would give him female cultivators from the human clan. Xue Fei should be quite interested in them. Chen Yan said, "The law enforcement camp is divided into the inner camp and the outer camp. This void stele records the peak achievements of the experts in the outer camp. Normally, other than the top 10, which was very difficult to change, the other names would change frequently. Before you go to the inner camp in the future, you can take another test and see if you can keep your name in the top 10. Inner camp? Chen Yan grinned and exuded invisible pressure from his body. In the law enforcement camp, there are only 1,000 places in the inner camp. The difference between the inner and outer camps was obvious. Most of the outer camp's people had only explored about 70 to 80,000 li of their origin sea. However, as you can see, those on the void stone stele are the top-notch branches, and their origin seas have expanded to 100,000 li. However, the development of the origin sea did not mean absolute strength. For example, you were able to fight your way into the top 100. This is something that even some people who have completely opened up their origin sea might not be able to do. Han Fei's pupils constricted slightly. How do I enter the inner camp? Chen Yan sneered and said, "The inner camp implements an elimination system, and the positions of the inner camp are occupied by those who are capable. It's actually very simple to enter the inner camp. So long as you dare to challenge the inner camp and are able to fight your way through, then you'll be considered to have entered. But let me tell you, this kind of challenge has an extremely high chance of death. In other words, the battle between the inner and outer camps will be fought to the death." Han Fei pretended to be yearning, and Chen Yan saw it in his heart. He said, "Lord Primeval wants you to enter the internal camp within 30 years. This is a very strict test. With your current strength, it will be extremely difficult for you to enter the inner division. There were no weaklings there. Of course, if you can enter the inner camp, the benefits will be beyond your imagination. As an outstanding talent of the outer camp, the city will give you subsidies every year." As he spoke, Chen Yan threw a star shell to Han Fei. "Here are the resources that you can continue to explore the origin sea in your current state. It's your reward for entering the top 100 of the Death Mountain. If you want more rewards, there are two ways. One is to become a scavenger and search primitive graveyards, but it will take you a long time." Han Fei asked, "What about the other way?" The other way is to go to the scavenger arena. In the scavenger city, apart from the experts of the law enforcement camp, there are also independent scavengers. Most of them are not experts of the 10,000 Scales clan. Without a recommendation, they are generally not qualified to enter the law enforcement camp. But it doesn't mean that they are weak. In fact, scavengers are brave and good at fighting. They travel in the sea all year round and are not too weak. Most of them don't have the potential to prove themselves, but many are stronger than you. If you go to the scavenger arena and fight, you will gain resources quickly." In Chen Yan's eyes, he only had 30 years. It was unrealistic to be a scavenger, so Chen Yan only pointed out one way for him. Chen Yan said, "You used to be a human, so did the law enforcement camp. I'll leave after I ask someone to explain to you. I won't give you specific training. You only have 30 years. It's up to you. Remember, in the scavenger city, you can have anything as long as you have resources." As he spoke, Chen Yan waved his hand. "Ling Ran, come here." A capable female human cultivator immediately appeared before Chen Yan. "Lord Law Enforcer," Chen Yan said, "tell Yi Fenglu about the law enforcement camp." As soon as he finished speaking, Chen Yan's figure flashed and vanished on the spot. A moment later, on Zhao Hongwang's side, Chen Yan took out a detailed record and said, "Lord Primordial, after testing it was found that this boy's spatial sense, combat intuition, reflexes and combat understanding are all higher than that of ordinary people. The conclusion is that the upper limit of his strength is between 310,000 and 330,000 points. Because he is good at finding weaknesses, He can enter the list of top 100. His soul power is between 720,000 and 780,000 points, which can't be so high for people in the same realm. He must have had a special opportunity. The endurance of this person's body is between 31 and 370,000 waves. He should also be on the path of body tempering, but he hasn't refined his body for long. It should be a problem with his bloodline. His bloodline can amplify up to 1-2 times, but the upper limit is unknown. This boy's continuous combat ability should be based on his bloodline. Listening to Qin Yan's detailed report, Zhao Honghuang nodded slightly. You missed one thing. His heavenly meridian makes his recovery extremely strong, which greatly increases his endurance in battle. Chen Yan hurriedly said, I made a mistake. I overlooked this. Zhao Honghuang nodded. But don't worry about it. You can pay attention to him when he challenges the internal camp. Yes, Lord Primordial. After Qin Yan left, Zhao Honghuang said to the Holy Land, it seems that he is indeed good. He is a rare talent in 10,000 years. But it's not that there are no such people in history. Some died young, and there are even more in the entire East Ocean Divine Continent. Everything depends on his performance in the future. In Zhao Honghuang's ears, the Emperor of 10,000 Scales just hummed. On the other side, Ling Ran didn't expect that he would be the one explaining to Han Fei. Would Lord Qin Yan let a powerhouse who could make it to the top 100 of the Death Mountain get involved with human cultivators? Han Fei also felt that something was wrong. He could feel that countless people were looking at him. Those people were more or less shocked. At first, they were shocked that he made it to the top 100. Now, they were shocked that Qin Yan asked a human cultivator to explain to such a powerhouse. Han Fei immediately understood Qin Yan's intention. He was deliberately making enemies for himself. Only by making enemies for himself could he have enough enemies to force himself to grow. It was just a routine, but those in power would never explain it to you. Han Fei thought that if nothing unexpected happened, the news that he had mutated from a human to what he was now would spread soon. But Han Fei didn't care. He said indifferently, let's get started. Ling Ran immediately came back to her senses and hurriedly said, well, what do you want to know? Han Fei glanced at her coldly. Tell me everything you know. Ling Ran blushed and thought that he was right. He had just arrived, so he must know very little about the law enforcement camp. Ling Ran said, the law enforcement camp is one of the two major forces in the city of scavengers. The other force is the scavengers. The management of the scavengers is jointly managed by many heaven-opening state powerhouses. In terms of nature, it's not as good as the law enforcement camp. But the number of sea-opening state powerhouses in the two sides is about the same, less than 20,000. Han Fei's eyelids twitched. Does this mean that there are nearly 40,000 sea-opening state powerhouses in the city of scavengers? Han Fei knew about the scavengers, but he didn't expect the number to be more than he thought. Continue. Han Fei's voice was indifferent. Chen Yan wanted others to see him being close to the human race, but he certainly couldn't be close to the human race. Ling Ran said in her heart that this person was obviously a newcomer, but he looked like a big shot, which made her quite unhappy. Unfortunately, she couldn't defend a guy who had entered the list of top 100 of the Death Mountain as soon as he arrived. Ling Ran continued, the law enforcement camp is divided into two camps. In the outer camp, there are about 8,000 people left in the main city, and 7,000 people should be in the graveyard battlefield, which is the battlefield where the three main cities compete for the primitive graveyard. And the remaining 8,000 people, most of them are carrying out tasks, trials, or exploring the primitive graveyard. There are 1,000 people in the inner camp. This information didn't make much sense, so Han Fei simply asked himself, what is the rank of the list of top 100 of the Death Mountain in the outer camp? Ling Ran nodded. That's hard to say. Logically speaking, you can enter the top 100. However, there are many strong people with a rank of more than 300 in the Death Mountain test. Since you can reach more than 300, then you can only judge your rank according to your Dao, personal combat power limit, secret methods, and other conditions. In short, your strength is very close. After all, the living dead are different from real people. but I estimate that you are at least in the top 2,000. Once you kill more than 400 living dead on the Death Mountain, your strength will definitely be in the top 100 of the outer camp, or even higher. Han Fei asked, "Do you need me to challenge them one by one?" Ling Ran said, "The outer camp generally doesn't have a ranking, only the inner camp does. The outer camp is mainly for groups. After all, they have to carry out tasks and explore the primitive graveyard. Of course, if you want to challenge them, you can go to the scavenger arena, where almost all the kings of the city of scavengers are ranked." Han Fei nodded slightly. "Tell me about the scavenger arena." Chapter 2180. From Ling Ran, Han Fei soon learned some basic information about the scavenger law enforcement camp. It turned out that the law enforcement camp was divided into the Venerable Realm and the Pioneer Sea Realm. Han Fei was now in the Pioneer Sea Realm and was about to enter the top group. Zhao Honghuang gave him 30 years to enter the internal camp. But he didn't mention the internal camp at the beginning. Of course, Han Fei didn't mind. There were 5 basic ways to become stronger in the Pioneer Sea Realm: Scavenger's Secret Realm, Cultivation Tower, Graveyard Battlefield, Scavenger Way, and Scavenger Arena. Among them, tens of thousands of scaled tribe members chose the Scavenger's Secret Dungeon, the Graveyard Battlefield, or the Cultivation Tower. Among them, the cultivation room in the Cultivation Tower was full of spiritual energy and chaotic energy. It was said that the infinite void nodes there were very fragile and it was easy to absorb chaotic energy. However, although the Cultivation Tower was good, it consumed a lot of energy crystals and other resources. Without resources, it was difficult to stay in the Cultivation Tower for a long time. Scavenger was a name for foreigners. As for the arena, it was mostly used by scavengers. However, members of the law enforcement camp often died in the arena. The Scavenger Arena, like all the arenas that Han Fei knew, had a strong gambling nature. Under normal circumstances, the Scavenger Arena was mainly used for Venerable Realm battles, and the Pioneer Sea Realm battles were only 1/10 of the Venerable Realm battles. Besides, the Pioneer Sea Realm battles usually had bets, and at least they could get subsidies from the arena. Han Fei didn't plan to fight in the arena for the time being. Theoretically, the combat power he showed on the Death Mountain was not enough for him to be arrogant. Therefore, he needed a buffer. While Ling Ran was introducing the law enforcement camp to Han Fei's identity information was suddenly spread. Law enforcement camp? What? Yifeng Lu is a human? How can he be a human with that look? Don't bully me. Since when can a human look like that? The messenger said, "I didn't believe it at first, but it's true." However, this matter was true. It was said that this fellow had accidentally ingested some kind of ancient blood essence, causing his bloodline to mutate and mutate into his current appearance. So, because of his bloodline, he is becoming less and less like a human. But where did you hear that? Where did you hear that? Lord Chen Yen said it himself. Motherfucker. To think that this Yifeng Lu is actually a lowly human. I was even applauding him just now. I didn't expect him to be from such a race. Someone else frowned and said, "However, he shouldn't be considered a human anymore." Someone said, "Why not? If that's not the case, then why did Lord Chen Yen let that human woman, Ling Ran, receive him?" That seems to be true. Hee hee. At this moment, someone sneered and said, "Do you think Shanza will let this matter go? If he were to find out that a human expert had broken his Death God Mountain's record on the top 100 list and kicked him off the list by just one person, what do you think he would think?" Ling Ran also said, "The law enforcement camp's camp is in this valley. However, the abodes here were not opened. Rather, there were only so many abodes to begin with. If one wanted to have their own abode, they would have to fight for it. Also, for the next 2 days, you have to be especially careful of someone." It was just a fight for territory. Although it would lead to a fight, Han Fei wasn't afraid of a fight now. Ling Ran said, "Shanza, that is the last person on the Death God Mountain. That was the record he left 60 years ago. Now that you've broken his record, he probably won't give up." Han Fei sneered. "A broken record that no one has been able to break in 60 years? Ling ran. If someone else said this, Ling Ran would have explained how difficult it was to enter the Death God Mountain. However, Han Fei, a newcomer, had broken Shanza's record the first time he entered the Death God Mountain. This person was obviously a heavenly talent. Han Fei said carelessly, "Are there good and bad cave abodes?" Ling Ran took a deep look at Han Fei. "The higher, the better. The higher, the fewer. According to the height of the valley, you can actually see the strength ranking of the outer camp." Han Fei looked up. "How many people live on the highest floor?" Ling Ran's eyes widened. "There are 6 floors in the valley, and there are only 100 people on the top floor. It's the cave abode of the top 100 in the outer camp." Han Fei frowned slightly. "Didn't you say that there is no ranking in the outer camp?" Ling Ran said, "There is indeed no ranking in the outer camp, but there are also outstanding experts in the outer camp. They occupy the top floor of the cave abodes, and few people can shake the top 100 experts of the outer camp." Han Fei sneered. "The top 100 experts of the outer camp?" Han Fei asked, "Which floor does that Shanza live on? What's his ranking?" Ling Ran said, "The 2nd floor. There is no ranking, but if I have to count carefully, he is among the top 1,000 in the outer camp." Han Fei calculated in his heart. According to the number of Pioneer Sea Realm experts in the law enforcement camp, Shanza should be in the top 10%, probably about 5% or 6%, which didn't sound weak. "Which floor do you humans live on?" Ling Ran's face was a bit ugly. Han Fei didn't need to ask anymore. It seemed that he was at the bottom. So Han Fei changed the topic. "Let's go. Take me to the cultivation tower." As the saying goes, everything should have a buffer time. Although Han Fei could easily defeat the inner and outer camps, he could not defeat him as soon as he arrived. Otherwise, what would others think of him as a super monster who had appeared out of nowhere? Such a monstrous level of powerhouse, when others wanted to use him, they would also have some fear in their hearts. In particular, he claimed that he was a mutation of a human. Ling Ran was slightly relieved. He thought that this person was going to challenge the top 100 experts of the outer camp. If so, this newcomer was too strong. However, when Ling Ran was about to leave with Han Fei, someone suddenly shouted, "Stop!" Han Fei looked back, only to see a member of the 10,000 scales holding an iron ball in his hand. He was following 5 or 6 people, sneering at Han Fei and Ling Ran. Ling Ran said, "This person is called Qin Feng. Although he is not as strong as Shanza, he is almost one of the self-strong experts on the 3rd floor. The iron ball in his hand is called the Chaos Ball. It is very heavy and is his combat weapon." Chen Feng snorted coldly and said, "Human, you've just arrived, yet you're not paying respects to the sect? Where are you planning to go?" Ling Ran said, "The law enforcer asked me to explain the law enforcement camp to Yi Fenglu. I am going to take him to the cultivation tower now." "Shut up. Who are you to speak here?" Behind Xin Feng, a powerhouse from the 10,000 Scales clan shouted in a low voice. His voice was full of divine soul demonic voice, and he went straight to Ling Ran and Han Fei. This was a test, and he also tested Han Fei. However, how could a small fry test a dignified human emperor? Han Fei looked up and shifted his gaze to that person. His gaze was terrifying, the void exploded, and the person who spoke spat out blood. "How dare you? How dare a mere newcomer be so arrogant?" Ling Ran was also surprised. Was Yi Fenglu really so tough? Han Fei raised his head slightly and said leisurely, "Is this the powerhouse from the 3rd floor you were talking about? Why is he so weak?" Ling Ran was stunned. "When did I say that?" However, Chen Feng's face immediately darkened. "Yi Fenglu, you are just a level 1 human. You ate the mutant blood by mistake and mutated. An inferior race will always be an inferior race. Do you think you can be arrogant just because you changed your skin? That's right. I was wondering what race you are. It turns out that you are just a mutated human. No matter how you mutate, you can't change your identity as a human." Ha! While people behind Qin Feng were laughing at him, Ling Ran also looked at Han Fei in shock. "He is a human? Your name is Qin Feng?" Han Fei was expressionless and his voice was indifferent, but there was a hint of murderous intent in him. Qin Feng smiled. That's me. What are you going to do? Don't say that I don't take care of the newcomers. I won't make things difficult for you today. As long as you bow to me, I will let you go. Clanged with a flash of cold light, a long knife appeared in Han Fei's hand. He said, if you can take one attack from me, I will bow to you. Instantly, Qin Feng's lips that had just curled up froze. Does this human really think he is something just because he changed his skin? How dare he be so arrogant to me, a member of the 10,000 Scales clan, in the law enforcement camp? Ling Ran's face changed drastically. After all, Han Fei was a human. There were some things he didn't know yet. She said to him telepathically, Yi Fenglu, the battle on the Death God Mountain is different from the real battle in the law enforcement camp. You have just arrived and will have an explosive growth period. It's not a good time to fight now. However, Han Fei didn't seem to hear Ling Ran's advice at all. Qin Feng, on the other hand, was amused. Take one attack from you? Ha! You are an inferior human. Do you know what you are talking about? The other powerful figures of the 10,000 Scales clan all shook their heads. Even though this guy is a heavenly talent, he is doomed. He is so arrogant when he just arrived. I think he doesn't know how to spell the word death. Let Brother Feng take one attack from him? How dare he say that? Is he crazy? Fine. Looks like Shanzi doesn't have to do anything. Han Fei looked at Ling Ran coldly and said, Is it allowed to kill here? Chapter 2181. Han Fei's question, is killing allowed here? Ling Ran was scared directly. Was this man crazy? He wants to kill Qin Feng just because of this? Secretly, some human kings frowned. Idiot. He doesn't even know how to be patient. He's just a sea expansion realm cultivator, but he's so arrogant. He can't even stand a few taunts. How long can he survive the 10,000 scale race? Someone shook his head. How stupid. Even if he's a heavenly talent, so what? Doesn't the 10,000 scale race have any heavenly talents? Alas. No matter what he has become, he's still a human. Are we going to watch him be attacked by the 10,000 scale race? Then what should we do? Can you stop him? Or can anyone? Someone murmured, if he lowers his head, everything will be over. Does it have to be a matter of life and death? In the field, Han Fei didn't care what the onlookers said but simply repeated, I asked, is it allowed to kill people here? Ling Ran didn't know what to say. Qin Feng, on the other hand, sneered and said, Do you think you can kill me? Han Fei looked at Qin Feng. Do you dare to bet? Let's decide who's better and who's dead. After that, Han Fei took out the deposit that Chen Yan had just given him and said, This is what the law enforcer gave me just now. 60,000 kilometers of the origin sea, and I'll open up 10 or 20,000 kilometers of resources. This is the bet. I'll ask you again, do you dare to accept? Chen Yan, who was watching the show, cursed when he saw the star shell that he had just thrown out. This guy is really daring. He hasn't even recovered from his injuries, and he wants to fight Qin Feng to the death? But that's more exciting. Chen Yan snorted. If you want to fight to the death, get the hell to the life and death arena. Don't embarrass me there. Chen Yan said. Chen Feng's momentum was immediately reduced, and he hurriedly bowed to the void. Yes, law enforcer. Han Fei looked indifferent and generous. He took out such a large amount of resources just like that. Ling Ran and the others might not be able to save up so many resources even after thousands of years, but Han Fei took them out as the bet. On the second floor, a 10,000 scales expert said, Qin Feng, since you're already looking for trouble, don't embarrass the 10,000 scales tribe. If you still don't go, we won't be able to stand it anymore. Someone laughed and said, Qin Feng, they're giving you resources. Whether you can accept it or not depends on yourself. It's fine if you can't catch it, but if you don't dare to, then you can go to the graveyard battlefield with your butt between your legs. Every race had their own pride. The 10,000 scale tribe had been ruling over the scavenger city for a long time. They had always been the ones bullying other tribes. Since when did they dare to let other tribes challenge them in their own territory? At this moment, Chen Feng was stuck between a rock and a hard place. Life and death arena? Very well, let me see just how strong a despicable human like you is. Han Fei sneered in his heart. Sure enough, he was an idiot. It wasn't easy for him to reach the Pioneer Sea realm, but just because he wanted to show off, he lost his life. This was just like how white people discriminated against black people. If some people discriminated against them, they might have some ability and means. But some people discriminated blindly. If they really stood together with the other party, they would die if they couldn't even take 2 slaps. In the law enforcement camp, there was a life and death arena. However, it was only used once every few years. After all, wherever there were people, there would be Jianghu. Now, it could be changed to, wherever there were intelligent creatures, there would be Jianghu. The 10,000 scale tribe fought among themselves in the life and death arena, not to mention other races. Chen Feng and Han Fei, who were stuck between a rock and a hard place, came to the life and death arena that was only 1,000 miles away. This was a place sealed by an array formation. Only when someone stood on the stage would the array formation's seal be activated. Before the life and death arena that had not been opened for a few years, Han Fei stood on the arena without hesitation. When a misty light array lit up, Han Fei looked at Chen Feng and said indifferently, "Still not coming up. Yi Feng Lu wanna fight?" Chen Feng originally just wanted to show off. If it was really a human, he would fight. But how could there be any humans in the law enforcement camp now? But who would know that Han Fei was so tough? And he was so arrogant. He had only been in the law enforcement camp for less than a day and he already wanted a life and death arena. Chen Feng calculated in his mind. Even if this Yi Feng Lu made it to the list of top 100 of the Death Mountain, no matter how strong he was, he would only be as powerful as Shan Zhe. Even if Shan Zhe was stronger than him, it would be a fool's dream for him to kill him first. Besides, his Dao was a void phantom with infinite clones. As long as the clones were not destroyed, the original body would not die. How would he be able to kill him? Instantly, Chen Feng stepped onto the life and death arena. He sneered, "Yi Feng, you asked for this? Don't join the human race in your next life." Clanged Han Fei stabbed the long saber into the arena and curled his lips. "Let me teach you a lesson. You must be qualified to discriminate. You are not even as good as a maggot in the wasteland. How dare you come to the life and death arena?" "How dare you?" Chen Feng shouted. His voice was filled with soul sound, but Han Fei's expression did not change at all. Below the arena, Ling Randy said to Han Fei many times, "You can admit defeat in the life and death arena. As long as you admit defeat, you don't have to go on." However, Han Fei ignored the girl's suggestion. "Admit defeat? I will never admit defeat." At this moment, the array of the life and death arena had been opened. Almost all the people who were still in the valley of the law enforcement camp had come to watch the battle. Those who didn't come were mostly watching with their perception. Even Chen Yan was watching with great interest. Chen Yan didn't care about the death of 1 or 2 Pioneer Sea Realm cultivators at all. Their death would only encourage the growth of cultivators. Of course, in Chen Yan's view, Chen Feng was dead for sure. He wasn't underestimating Chen Feng, but Han Fei had controlled his strength when he killed the Divine Mountain. If he really went all out, his explosive power would only be stronger. But the death of a sea expansion expert could serve as a warning to even more people. Next time, they had to think before doing anything. The person that I personally brought to take the test was knocked down by you guys so easily. Is there a hole in your brain? At this moment, outside the life and death arena, some people had already begun to waver. Someone was also guessing, how long do you think Yi Feng Lu can last before admitting defeat? Someone laughed and said, I guess 100 seconds. This guy can break the record of Death Mountain's top 100 list. Although he is the last one, it's still a record. He shouldn't be weak. Someone shook his head. Chen Feng is too reckless. I'm not worried that he will be killed. However, if he can't defeat Yi Feng Lu quickly, it will be a shame. Someone guessed, have you ever thought that Chen Feng will lose? No matter whether the Death Mountain's top 100 list can show his strength or not, it's not easy to get on that list. Otherwise, why don't you? There was a lot of discussion off the field. On the field, Chen Feng's figure turned into thousands of clones, and the iron ball in Chen Feng's hand was also changing. However, the ball was no longer the size of a fist, but the size of a water droplet. Every drop was trying to stimulate Han Fei's qi and blood. Besides, Han Fei's body was like a magnet. When the iron ball turned into a small ball and dispersed, Han Fei seemed to be restrained by an invisible force. Seeing that Han Fei was still standing there, Chen Feng tentatively shouted in a low voice, "Blood bite." At the moment when those small balls surged towards Han Fei crazily, there was a clang, as if a string in the sky had snapped. The lords watching the battle only saw a flash of knife light, surrounded by knife light. In the entire life and death ring, knife qi soared into the sky, and those small balls that could stimulate qi and blood exploded crazily. And all of Chen Feng's clones couldn't even resist this knife qi at all and instantly exploded into powder. Only Chen Feng's real body was left, and with a look of horror, he tried to recall the small balls to block this knife. However, Han Fei's current draw technique had been elevated to the level of Tao, the Tao of nature, and the Tao of knives. When this knife slashed out, the entire space was filled with endless knife qi. Chen Feng was shocked. He wanted to admit defeat, but the strong knife qi suppressed him and he couldn't make a sound at all. He wanted to roar with his soul, but his soul was completely suppressed in his body and couldn't jump out at all. Puff, 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 the lords only saw that Chen Feng's body was torn into thousands of cracks in the blink of an eye. Bam! When Chen Feng's body exploded, the knife light that Han Fei slashed out had just reached him. The saber light crushed through the void, not giving Chen Feng any chance to regenerate at all. It directly slashed through the void. Rumble! At the same time, Han Fei held the knife backhand, and the long knife floated behind him, not into his body. He learned this from Wang Yijian, mainly because it was handsome. Humph! You're too weak. Then, Han Fei looked around and said coldly, "My name is Yi Feng. Remember this name. In the future, I will make you tremble." Han Fei said this indifferently, grabbed Chen Feng's resources, and then walked to Ling Ran. "Let's go. To the cultivation tower." Ling Ran was dumbfounded. It wasn't until Han Fei walked up to her and spoke that she came to her senses. However, at this moment, Ling Ran was full of admiration for Han Fei. In all her knowledge, there was only one word: strong. If she had to add another word, it would be very strong. Hiss! At that moment, the onlookers were all dumbfounded, and countless people gasped. Those who had just made a bet were all dumbfounded. Someone murmured, "It's really just 1/." Some of the experts on the first and second floors narrowed their eyes. This Yi Feng Lu was much stronger than they had imagined. Even Qin Yen couldn't help but frown. The Tao of knives has already entered the Tao of heaven? Is this kid's comprehension so terrifying? You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.